All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Motion Picture Editors Guild Membership Outreach Committee presentation of Helping Assistant Editors Get into the Chair, Chapter 3. I'm Sean Linnell, picture editor of Local 700. I'm also a member of the Membership Outreach Committee. If you missed Chapters 1 and 2, you can sign on to the Guild's website, and under Member to Member Past Events, you will find the first two panels that were held earlier this year. Our moderator for today learned the craft of editing by working with many talented directors such as Peyton Reed, Robert Rodriguez, Nick Cannon, and James Mangold. He found early success when he won an Emmy for cutting a Community of Care Joe for the American Heart Association. He also helped bring nonlinear computer-based editing systems to the forefront of the industry by establishing new post-production workflows that we still use today. He co-authored the book Transitions, Voices on the Craft of Digital Editing. He is best known for his work on Bring It On, Desperado, School Dance, and the TV series SWAT, Teen Wolf, and Z Nation. He is currently serving his second term on the Motion Picture Editors Guild Board of Directors. Please welcome Mr. Eric C. Anderson, ACE.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean. You know, it's Sean's brainchild to do these panels, and they've been great all year, and very honored to be back with everybody. I see some returning faces, which is great. So a little housekeeping here before we start. I'm going to try to move along a little quickly, and as I can, thank you, I can read my own writing here. So we have a good amount of time for the Q&A portion of the panel afterwards. We will not, we will be, actually there is a change. We will be able to accommodate, there we go, we will be able to accommodate questions online. So for those of you online, please put your questions in the chat, and we will try to ask them to our panel that I'll be introducing in a second here. You have raffle tickets for the people who are here. Those raffle tickets at the end, we have, I think, 10 posters with everybody's signature on them that we'll be handing out after the event. So hang on to those raffle tickets. But once you do get the poster, I don't want to see it on eBay the next day, okay? So joining us today on the panel are editors that were formerly assistant editors, even if for 3 days. Harry Yoon, ACE, come on down. Melinda Ziner-Guerra, come on down. Now, you're now ACE. She just got in, so. Braden French, ACE. Isai Seton, ACE. And Sharon Carolyn Miller, ACE. Wow, that is a first where we have all of our panelists, American Cinema Editor members. So that's really great. No single person has the same origin story, which is why no single editor will edit a scene in the same way, which is why we're all unique. Let's get started with the panel with breaking in stories and how they got into the chair. Now, I did bring this hourglass to threaten you if you take too long. I'll go, you took a half hour to tell your origin story. So, but one of the things about this hourglass, and I'd love to have it in my cutting room, is for you assistant editors, if you see your editor really stressed, is because this is all production, this is all post-production, right? But this is where the editor sits. Everything goes through him, or her, or they, or them. So with that, the time is ticking. Harry, we're going to start out with you. Let me just flip my page. Harry Yoon is an editor on Minari, nominated for 6 Academy Awards, and an excellent film. I hope all of you have seen it. And of course, Marvel's Shang-Chi, and the Legend of the Three Rings. I've been watching the Lord. Well, I've been watching the Lord of the Rings, Power of the Rings. So you know the 3 rings. You know, so that's where I came up with that. And then the 10 rings, of course. He also cut the pilot episode of the Netflix TV series Beef, in which he won his ACE Eddie Award. Congrats. his upcoming project, yes. And I'm really excited about this project coming up, actually. The Fire Inside, about Olympic boxer. Yeah. Actually, let's get him the mic since he's first up.
Thanks,
There you
man.
go. And that way people at home, so say that again.
Yes, Clarissa Shields.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. And you're going to go to the Toronto Film Festival with it?
Oh, no, it already premiered.
Oh, it already
Yeah,
premiered.
yeah.
And how was the reception?
Very, very good.
Yeah, I'm really excited for you in December when it gets released
Thank you.
widely, and
Thank
I
you.
look forward to celebrating that release with you. Yoon is also a member of the Film Editors Branch of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So congrats on that. So, just curious, what's your favorite film?
It's a kind of an obscure film. It's a Kurosawa film called Ikiru, which means to live. All right.
All right, a couple people have
Kurosawa
seen it.
fans here. That's awesome. And I love the movie because I watched it at a time in which I was deciding my career path in college. And watching that film and seeing the kind of storytelling that was possible, that felt life-giving, that felt encouraging, but also cinematically so complex and beautifully told, I was like, if I could participate in this kind of culture making, it would be a life well lived. And that whole movie is about what does it mean to live a good life. And so it just felt like all aspects of that film were encouraging me to maybe choose this as a career.
You have a quote that I really like, and I want to read this out to everybody here. You have no way of predicting your future, no matter how well you prepare. So, at the age of 31, you sold everything and moved to LA and started an unpaid internship, which we're going to get into a little more in depth as we move along with the panel. What did your parents, who are first generation Korean immigrants, feel about that?
Well, I think it was because of their sacrifice in coming to America and working really hard at small businesses that it was such a tough decision for me to make all through my 20s. I loved film all the way back into high school and college, but it was really hard for me to firmly commit to a film career all through my 20s. So I kind of went back and forth. So I went to film school briefly in the graduate directing program at NYU, but then I took a leave of absence, which turned permanent. I worked in the tech industry for a while as a product manager, but then finally, at the age of 31, right after 9/11 happened, I sort of woke up to the fact that like it's hard to predict and it's hard to be secure about any decision that you make in terms of your career because anything can happen. And so I went to my parents and I said, you know, hopefully I've proven that I am not a total screw up, that I can hold a job and I can sort of make good decisions by myself. Can I have your blessing to take this very risky thing, to do this very risky thing given how much you've sacrificed? And you know, one thing my dad said to me was, you know, the reason that I came here to the United States wasn't so much that I wanted you to have financial security, although that would be nice. He said that I wanted you to have a choice because growing up without a lot of means in Korea, I didn't have a lot of choices as far as how I could pursue my future. And that was the most important thing for me. And, you know, it was a very, very important moment for me. I took that blessing. I also went to see a therapist in San Francisco before I talked to my parents. And one of the things that she equipped me with was this sense that my particular kind of creativity might be worthwhile. Because I was hesitant to go into film because I was like, we all have to be writer-directors. We all have to generate our own stories. And if I can't do that, do I deserve to be a filmmaker? And she said, well, how are you creative? And I said, well, if people come to me with an idea, I'm often able to make it better or to refine it or to give them good suggestions. But I don't know. That doesn't feel like it's as worthy. And being a San Francisco very progressive therapist, she's like, you're so hung up on this Western male idea of creativity that there are so many cultures outside of the US or outside of America where creativity is inherently collaborative, where they value when a group makes something together. And so don't devalue what makes you creative. And it was almost like my father's blessing and then that piece of advice was what made me decide to finally sell everything and then really pursue in earnest this desire to be an editor, because I really found in my experience that that was the kind of creativity, that sort of nurturing, collaborative creativity that was sort of in my wheelhouse.
Did you do cutting up in San Francisco?
Only
did you
on
have some skills when you came down here?
I like I said, I went to film school briefly, and so
For 1 year?
Yeah, for 1 year to the graduate directing program, and then but all through college, before making this decision, I actually edited. I even asked to edit final videos instead of final papers for some of my classes, and the professors who were up on media knew that it took not just as much, if not more, work to put together a good documentary piece or a good video essay, and so they're like, yeah, we're really into giving you a chance to do that. So I edited a lot of my own projects, but I also collaborated with people on theirs.
So you came down here, you found a place to live, and then you got this intern job with who? Tell us who.
Well, the first internship was with a filmmaker that was doing a Miramax film at the time called The Great Raid. And I was an unpaid intern in that producer's office. And then when the crew who were shooting in Australia finally were able to make it back to LA for post, which included the amazing director Jean Dahl, the editor Pietro Scaglia, and a number of other amazing people, I was able to ask to be a PA on that film.
And we'll get into this a little bit later, but what happened with that job?
I was fired from that job.
So to be continued. So after you were fired from the job, and you're going to love this story, that's got to hurt. And what did you do?
Well, I thought my career was over, but here I was, like, on this huge film, and my reputation is one that, and we'll talk about why. It was very well deserved that I was fired from. But I kept at it. I learned some really important lessons from it, and I was very lucky to be a fellow in a program that Film Independent does called Project Involve, and I was the only editing fellow. One of the directing fellows got a job as an assistant for Catherine Hardwicke, an amazing filmmaker, while she was working in pre-production on Lords of Dogtown, and Catherine needed another assistant that knew how to edit, and so I interviewed for that job. That's its own story, which I won't get into. I didn't get the job on Friday, did something through the weekend, then did get the job on Monday. And
when are we going to talk about that?
We're running out of time.
I don't
here.
have in my notes.
Yeah.
What's going on? I want to hear
running
that
out
one.
of time. But suffice to say, I learned some really important lessons there, too. And when Nancy Richardson, who's an amazing editor, came on to edit that movie, I asked Catherine, can I please assist Nancy?
She's also a board member.
Yeah, who's incredible.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to join her cutting room as an apprentice editor, and that's what got me into the union, and that's what started me off on my journey.
Wonderful. Give it up. All right. Melinda is hang on a second. I got to get focused here. Melinda is celebrated for shaping a variety of visual stories across television and film. Most recently, Melinda received an Emmy win and an ACE nomination for her work alongside an all-female editing team on HBO's A Black Lady sketch show. Melinda has 3 previous Emmy nominations for her editing work on VH1's RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars, A&E's Born This Way, and Discovery's Naked and Afraid XL, which I love that show. Rumor has it that you started your career as an actor?
I did. Yes, well, I tried to be more bartending and waiting tables, but yes, that was the intention.
So before we get into your breaking in story, what is your favorite film?
I will have to say The Princess Bride.
Wow,
Oh,
and
okay.
why?
See, yeah.
And why?
It was the first movie that I watched. I think I probably watched it like 50 times in the weekend that we rented it, from Blockbuster.
I think that's impossible to do that 50 times.
I know, I really did. And it's the one movie I can quote, and my husband hadn't seen it when we started dating, and that was one movie I was like, we can't get married until you've seen The Princess Bride. So
And
you understand
wait,
my
did
quote.
the marriage rely on his knowledge of or liking of the film?
No, he just had to watch it. Like, he hadn't seen that or A Christmas Story, and those were just like deal breakers. So he watched them. We're married. Everything's good.
And he loves those films, I'm
But
sure.
you know, I had so many male roommates who could quote like every movie they had quote, and it's the only movie I have quotes from. Like, I can do the whole thing back to front. So yeah.
What's your favorite quote?
I mean,
I know it's on the spot.
right. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed
Yes.
my father. Prepare to die. I mean,
Yeah.
Mandy Patinkin. Come
Yeah,
on,
I know. He
man.
knocked it out of the park
Yeah.
on that movie. So, you came out here to be an actor.
Yes.
How do you fall into editing from acting? Was it
I had
cutting
done
reels? Or
a little bit, yeah. So I did. My college didn't really have we had a theater department. We didn't really have a film studies program at the time, but you could do an independent thing, and we were starting to film classes. So I learned to edit on Premiere 3.
I'm
That's
sorry.
the number 3,
Sorry
not
about
the
that.
year. That was before we went to years, so that's how long ago that was. And enjoyed that, but and then when I came out here, kind of knew enough to like help friends with their acting reels, and spent many years bartending and waiting tables and auditioning and getting rejected and never working as an actor. And then finally I was like, maybe there's something else out there for me. I think I need like a break from this, and went and did like a program that was a little more focused on learning broadcast, like hosting, or like for television, if you want to be a TV anchor, or on the radio. We learned some radio software stuff, but also Final Cut and Avid. And that's kind of
Sorry
where
about that.
REP Final Cut. And that's kind of where I really was like, oh, this is fun. This is like, gets the creativity and the storytelling. And that's when I kind of started to realize what drew me to the business was more the storytelling aspect. Like, I'm a big reader, but I'm not a writer. And, I love watching movies and TV because you're watching people, you're being affected by people's emotions, and the work that it takes for an actor to like cry or get into these vulnerable places. Like, that's what drew me to it, but also what is very hard to, the people who can do that, God bless them. Like, they are amazing. They deserve their flowers.
I read something here that you compare yourself to Michelangelo.
That sounds so pretentious when you say it out loud. But the idea that, like, I think the quote from him is that, like, he could see, like, within the rock, he sees the shape of the statue, and his job is to free the statue from the rock. And I kind of feel like that's what editing is a little bit. You get a pile of footage, and you have a script, or if you're an unscripted, you literally have a pile of footage and what people would like this to be. It's kind of like Chopped, right? Here's a basket of stuff. Make a dessert out of like sardines and crackers. And you're like, yum. So it's like you see all that, and then it's like, how do you're the one who has to put all those things together in a way to like bring that vision to life. And like Harry was said, like, you're the one who's helping nurture that and maybe make better ideas or like improvements and refine it. So I think that's kind of where it is. It's like you see there's something in all of this stuff, and you're the one who puts it together or brings it to life. Yeah.
And then how did you get into reality editing then?
I kind of fell into it once I started, learned editing. I had a friend who was working on a bunch of commercials for the gas company. And he was like, oh, Final Cut now? I need someone to help me with these like 30-second spots. And came on and did that. And I was like, oh, this is like a job. Like, you could, somebody
will pay you?
Pay somebody will pay me to do this like all the time. There's a lot less rejection. Depends. It depends. There's always rejection, but it's not quite as personal as when you're an actor. And then I had another friend whose husband was a post soup in the unscripted world, and was like, our show needs a night assist. And I was like, I know, I can do that. Sure. Did not know what I was doing. And luckily, like, the other night assist was very like gracious and really actually taught me how to sync in group. Like, when you're like, I can sync footage, but when it's 12 cameras over an 8-hour night investigation, and some don't have time code and some do, like
No slates.
no slates, God no, on a FLIR, like a thermal camera
Reality.
with no, like, Felice knows, Felice remembers. But yeah, so got into that and just was like, it just kind of flowed from there. And
You
you're
did
like,
the Destination Truth
did
shows?
Destination Truth and Finding Bigfoot, you know, a lot of
They still haven't found Bigfoot.
still haven't found him. Still haven't.
And what about the
someone? Yeah, they're still out there looking.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing that they still haven't found Bigfoot
He's really smart.
after all these days. Now, I see here that you did Zach Arnold's networking program.
I did, yeah.
Zach Arnold. Yeah, everybody knows Zach Arnold.
But I know Zach.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you know, I think very beneficial for me at the point I had wanted to make the transition from unscripted to scripted. I had started cutting some like indie features that were terrible and no one's ever heard of, and maybe they're out there streaming somewhere, and did some shorts. But I was like, how do I transfer my skills, but also like how do I start? I knew I needed to meet more people than like my bubble within the unscripted community, and Zach is great at teaching you how to like get over your introverted fears and send those outreach emails and how to write them and how to just like say what, like, part of the whole thing is like say what you want, right? Like it was very hard for me to even tell my friends like who had advanced, like, hey, I want to get into scripted too, like, can we talk about what you did? Like, that just felt like so imposing to me. And but
you
it was,
went out.
but
You
had to.
You
like,
went
had-
for it, and you tried to
did.
get on Glow.
I did.
So can you tell us that story? 'Cause I love it.
Yeah, like my old story producer from those early days had gone back to working with Genji as her producing partner, and I was working on Total Divas. Braden worked on that with me, and I was like, well, they're doing this comedic show about lady wrestling, and like I cut a wrestling show. I know all about wrestling now. And I was like, hey, you know, Tara, like, I'd love to, you know, maybe be considered for this. And she was like, oh, yeah. They're probably going to go with Netflix editors. And I was like, I need to, like, I know that means, like, you don't have the credits. So I was like, okay, so that was my thing. Like, how do I not have that be a response again? And it took a few years. Like, it took a few years. And that's when I started cutting those indies and the shorts. And I was like, I've got to go out there and get credits that at least say that I've done this, even if you haven't exactly seen what it is. Like, it's not a network television show, but it's like I've cut a horror movie, I've cut a comedy. Like, I can relate my actual aired credits in unscripted and my scripted credits that maybe nobody's seen, and I can at least lobby for my own experience.
How did going to the gym help your career?
Well, that is where I met a friend of mine who decided to start his own small production company and started doing these short, or not shorts, he did the features, but the whole concept for them was like, it's super low budget and everything is in one location. So we can, you know, don't have to deal with a bunch of set moves or all that. One of them was literally, it's called Confessional. It was in a box with 10 cameras and one person just at, so it was, but yeah, so it was like, then I also, you know, met a guy who's showrunner on the Walking Dead series and stuff. I was like, wow, people in the Valley, like, have real
They're
jobs.
friendly.
Well, I was like, this is where all like a little bit more established people, it's not all like, I feel like the young, this is going to sound so terrible, but when you're young and you're an actor, you move to Hollywood, right? And
right.
like, but the people who are like a little more established have like the
Want to
the
raise their
everyday
families, walk
jobs.
the
They're
dog.
in the Valley and they go to the gym in the morning before work. And I was like, I should have done this 10 years ago. But, you know, everything happens at the right time. So, yeah.
So, yeah, which gym?
It was Horsepower, CrossFit gym.
Wow.
I wouldn't
A little
recommend them anymore,
A
but
boutique or?
just CrossFit in general. I mean, there's several CrossFit gyms out here, but it's a little bit more of a community workout too. So you get to know the people you're working with, as opposed to if you're just going to LA Fitness and you're just on a machine with, you know, your earpods in.
So, Stephanie Philo.
Yes.
Had you worked with her, or was she kind of a
Yes.
mentor to you?
We worked together on a ghosty show back in the day, Stalked by a Ghost. You will not find it anywhere. But yeah, so we worked together, God, in like 2000, I don't even want to say, years ago. And just, you know, kept in touch. And she was one of those people that made that transition, and I was like, hey, you know, like I want to talk to you about how you made your transition. And then she was one of the people who just kept passing my resume, and eventually it hit. Thank you, Braden, for not being able to work on season 4 of Black Lady Sketch Show.
And that is
I took Braden's spot when he had to leave.
I think that is a perfect segue, get you off the hook a little bit here. Because, because you left.
Yes.
Because you had were you on another show?
I was, gosh, why couldn't I come back? Yeah, I was doing Washington Black for Hulu. So it went, I was on that show for a year and a half. They're still in post on it. But it overlapped. I was trying to figure out if there was a way to come back, but I couldn't do it. And I don't remember if it was Steph or Robin told me that they were looking at you to do it. I was like, oh yeah, yes, absolutely. So
Did you know each other before then?
yeah, we both worked in reality at Bunim Murray. So.
Oh, cool. And we're going to get into that. So let's do your little bio here.
Okay.
Since childhood, Braden French was passionate about making music and making short films using many tools at his disposal, and taught himself to edit on Sony Vegas and the later Final Cut Pro. I am so sorry.
It got me here.
Upon graduation from the University of Wisconsin with a film degree, Braden immediately made a 2-day, 2,000-mile drive across country to the glitz and glamour of Van Nuys. Very nice. Did you know that was the porn capital?
I
At
found
some
out
point.
after I got here. Yeah.
Those days are long gone, but it's
No,
always fun to say.
Once I was here, it made sense. I
Yeah,
was like,
a couple of
this is where they make this magic.
yeah. You still see a couple of signs every once in a while when you venture out there. Where he eventually got the first post-production job as a logger for MTV's The Real World Brooklyn. I actually like that show too. It was very
Yeah.
groundbreaking for the time.
Yeah.
Was it one of the first reality shows?
The Real World, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
it
one of
was-
the
it
first
was
real.
one of the OGs, yeah.
Yeah, the OGs, yeah. Which we will hear more about in a second. He received the Peabody for his work on the 2018 Surviving R. Kelly, and an Emmy and an ACE for his work on season 3 of HBO's Black Lady Sketch Show. There you go. And you won
Yes.
those, yeah.
Yes.
Most recently, Braden worked. Most recently, Braden worked with Forrest Whitaker's drama series Empire of Ocean Park.
Emperor.
Thank you. And is currently in post-production on a feature film to be released in theaters in 2025. Can you please tell us what that is?
I don't know, but I'll tell you the title is called Night Patrol. I don't know how much more I can say about it, but it's.
Is it one of those comic book things?
No. It's although it could be. It's not, but it could be. It's kind of a horror action with some comedy elements. It's pretty awesome. Whenever I try to describe it to people, so I'm not going to do it.
Well, that's
when I
good,
try to
though.
describe it, it sounds nuts, but it is nuts in a good way.
I think that's great. Movies that you can't describe are the ones that end up being the ones that are the best. What's your favorite film?
My favorite film is The Shining. Stanley Kubrick, The Shining.
Red Room.
Yes. I really don't know that I have an eloquent way of saying why, but it's one of, I think when I was younger, the first horror movie I ever watched was I want to say it's 91 or 92, The Candyman, the original one.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, and I was way too young. Oh my God. Me and my sister watched. My mom was kind of a horror buff, sort of, and me and my sister, we couldn't have been. I don't know. I could probably do the math, but I hate the math. Probably 7 or 8 or 9 or something like that. Like way too young for Candyman. But one of the things I remember about Candyman that I still tell today is to this day, from then to this day, I will never, ever go in front of a mirror and say Candyman. I'll never do it. And, even working in the industry, like all of you, it's like, you know this is fake. You know somebody wrote this and made it up. It's not real. They shot it. These are actors. I've seen the actors. Like, there's not a Candyman that's going to pop up behind me, but I'm not going to do it ever because it's like that's the thing that film does is it can feel real. It can plant this thing in your brain. If it's documentary, it can do it in a different way. But I think, you know, after that experience where my sister had nightmares for days and my mom was like, oh my God, why did I do this? I was sitting around stewing like, this was incredible. Oh my God. And then maybe a year later, after having talked to my mom about how much I loved Candyman and how into horror I was kind of getting, she showed me The Shining. And we sat in my basement and watched it. And it just
Sounds scary.
Yeah,
We sat in my basement with the cobwebs and the creaking floors.
That's exactly. It was
swinging
a whole
light
mood, yeah.
and the tied up guy in
Watched
the
it
corner.
at night, and it just blew my mind away in so many ways. Not just for the you know, there's something about The Shining that I love because it's so subjective and it's so you can watch it. 2 people, 5 people, 20 people could watch it and get 20 different things out of it. And, you know, I think one of the things that stuck out for me is there was such a haunting atmosphere and beauty to the movie. And, you know, the performances were a very specific thing that Kubrick went for. And it was just so, I thought even then that it was an amazing production, but while I was watching it, I wasn't thinking about production at all. I was glued into the story, and
Jack Nicholson's performance, I'm sure, and
yeah, God,
what's her name?
Shelley Duvall. Yeah,
I mean,
it was really amazing, and it just reverberated with me still to this day as strongly as when I watched it the first time. And actually, I had my wife watch it 3 or 4 years ago, and she was like, why is this your favorite movie? So it ain't for everybody, but
I think it's cinematically interesting. Like an image that always comes to my mind is that elevator door opening and all that blood flowing out. And in reality, that would never happen. But it's just terrifying.
Yeah,
it's just terrifying.
So much of it, it stuck, and to this day, again, it stuck with me for days. I actually did my final college paper I could be over embellishing here, but I think it was like a 30 to 40 page paper on the music of The Shining, and I waited till the very last minute to do that paper, so I was up for literally for 48 hours writing a paper, listening to The Shining score on repeat, and I tell you, it on the third day, as I went to hand it in, I could, you know, I was delirious. I could hear it playing in my head. I was seeing things. I was like, man, this movie's great.
Yeah, that movie fired on all cylinders. Yeah. So. That obviously sparked you for making your film. I think you were trying to figure out how the heck they made that movie and other movies that you were inspired by.
It was
so
magic.
you went to the University of Wisconsin, but you had a computer engineering major, and you took computer science courses, and you were coding when you discovered that you hated math, and you said, and I'll quote you on this, "Fuck this."
Yeah.
So what happened next?
Yeah. So I had always been a bit of a nerd and very into computers, which I think kind of went hand in hand with the editing component. But I was in, I think it was the beginning of my second year in college, and I was like, okay, calculus, the comp sci, all this. I love the engineering part, but oh my God, I can't do this every day for the rest of my life. So.
But you can sit in a dark room and re-edit one frame at a time.
Absolutely,
images.
Yeah. And so I started searching around at other majors. This was University of Wisconsin, which is not a known film school, and I started taking psychology courses. I took astronomy. I took ballroom dancing.
Ballroom.
Which I was excellent at, by the way.
Can you show us some moves?
You know what? Maybe in the after session.
You know what? When we're at the Ace Eddie Awards coming up, maybe we should circle around him and say, "Okay, show us some moves."
Something. Yeah. You know what? Me and my wife could do a little ball.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I was, paging through the classes book because I was like, okay, half these majors I'm not going to do because I don't feel like getting a PhD in them. And I came across a class called Introduction to Media Production, and I perked up, and I was like, through high school and middle school too, I was always shooting things with my little handy cam, and I had I bogarted my parents' 2 VHSs from the living room in the basement. I put them on top of each other, and I do the reel-to-reel thing where you play one and record the other, and I would cut like that. And
Half inch.
something.
VHS,
It was
you know?
VHS.
Yeah.
It was VHS.
VHS,
And
half inch.
like Eric said, I kind of eventually self-taught on Vegas. And so I got it worked at the time, and
It works, but it was kind of ass backwards.
no, I don't know. I haven't been in it since, but it worked for me. And so when I saw that intro to media production, I was like, oh shoot, this is my lane. And I took the class. It was everything I wanted it to be, and from then on, I changed my major to film with the focus that I would be looking to shoot and direct. I did not know that editing was actually the thing that I loved the most, but even at the time, it was definitely the thing I loved the most. It didn't, in Wisconsin at least, it didn't click for me. This is a career.
Right,
Yeah.
right. When I was in college, I learned quickly, everybody wanted to direct.
Right.
Or write, but nobody wanted to edit, so I started editing everybody else's films and found out that editing is just as important as directing.
Yeah, easily.
And if not
As
more
important
important,
as
'cause
any
that's where
any
my
part of the
films were
process.
created, and that's where my colleagues' films were created. But I want to focus you in on this internship that you discovered. I think it was Kevin Anderson, is that
Yeah,
correct?
so my school, Wisconsin, at the time, they had a mentorship program for a former student that had passed away. His friends out here made a program for one University of Wisconsin student every year to come out with I think it was like a $5,000 stipend, and they would help you get a couple unpaid internships, and then it was kind of and see what you can do from there. But it was just get you moved out, situated, put you with some people, and now it's your turn. So my senior year, I applied for it my junior year, and I almost got it, but since I was a junior, I couldn't move out. So my senior year, I did it again, and they awarded it to me. So I came out, and I did a couple unpaid internships, which really got me started in the process. And I also, they hooked me up with a few PA jobs, so I worked a ton of sets as a PA, some mostly unpaid, but my very first one was in Vegas. It was a Billy Zane movie called Magic Man, and I PA'd for 2 weeks in the 120-degree weather. So, and that's where I learned.
Did you
I
say,
don't want to be on set. Yeah.
frack this and walked off? And
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
But so on set, you would talk to people,
Yeah.
and you would tell them what you wanted to become or what you wanted
Yeah.
to do. So how did that help you get into the editing chair?
Yeah, so one of the sets I PA'd on, I had met a first AD. His name was Austin Davern, and he also directed shorts and stuff, but he was looking to kind of pivot into a career as a director. And we were just chatting in between, probably on lunch break or something. And I was telling him that I was becoming more and more interested in editing because I had kind of realized from my time in school to coming out here that to me that was the most magic part of the filmmaking process was the edit. And so I was telling him, if you have any shorts you're shooting, I would love to take a stab at cutting them. You don't have to pay me. If you don't like them, whatever. It's no sweat off your back. But if you do, maybe we can work together a bit. And he took me up on that, and we ended up doing, he might have did 4 or 5 shorts, all of which I cut. and then he did a feature, which I also cut probably way too early in my career, but it was a fantastic experience. And he also, he was still working as a first AD and a production manager, and he was working on a documentary for Bill Duke, the actor / director, and he brought me onto that project. He talked to Bill and brought me onto that project as the editor, and that's where I started working with Bill, and that really opened up my horizons once I started working with Bill.
Now that was that the help me out here? I'm looking at my notes.
Yeah, so the
Dark Girls.
Yeah,
Is
Dark
that the
Girls
project?
came after.
Okay.
So my first thing with Bill was a baseball project. It was really good, but it didn't land any funding. His next thing, so all these were like, they weren't sizzles, but they were like short mini docs to secure funding. So a sizzle in a way. And we did one, the next one we did was called Dark Girls, which was about colorism in the African American community, particularly with women. And I worked on this sizzle for several months, and we came out with it. It was really good, and the thing is, it caught a lot of viral attention, and we got a call from the director of the Toronto International Film Fest who said, "Hey, we want to premiere your movie at the I think it was 2011 Toronto Film Fest." We said, "Great." We got off the phone. We said, "Shit, we need to make a movie."
Now, you weren't getting paid to do that, right? Or just a little stipend, because you were
yeah,
a
it was
logger.
a very small.
You were
yeah.
a logger
Yeah.
at the time. Where were you
Yeah,
logging?
so at the same time I was doing all these things, I was also a logger on the Real World at Buena Murray.
and that was 10
and that
hours
was
of work. How many hours
At
of work?
least,
a day?
gosh, I don't. I
It wasn't an 9 to 5.
It was probably a 10-hour job
And-
every day. It was a
and-
full-time job.
And then you go home
and and then I
or
would
go
go
over
home
there
and cut whatever I was cutting every night, and sometimes in the morning right before I went to work.
So tell me, so when Toronto said we want to have a feature on this, you quit that job, right? And then just started cutting on.
I did not.
So
I kept my logging job, and I was cutting every single second of the day that I wasn't working that job, and on weekends I was barely sleeping. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but
you
it
were
did pay off.
young enough, and Jolt Cola or something like that, caffeine.
It's,
I don't know. It's just the passion and excitement of cutting.
Yeah.
So that went on to the Toronto Film Festival. It was quite successful, right?
Yeah. It premiered there, had a great premiere, got picked up and distributed, and led to several other.
And then OWN actually made a
follow-ups.
sequel to that.
Yeah, they
You know,
made
that's
they
how
kind of made
successful.
two sequels.
They
yeah.
made two sequels?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Both
Oprah's,
of which I ended up cutting. So.
Oh, you cut both of them?
Yeah. so
Wow. And you got paid for those,
I
right?
got paid for those. Yeah.
So how did you get into scripted then?
So, so I was cutting documentary, right, with Bill. At Buena Murray, I began cutting reality after I kind of moved into a position of dailies editor. There's a whole story here. I won't tell it in too much detail, but I tried to make myself known at Buena Murray as somebody who was interested in editing, somebody who had been doing it outside.
And this was before Dark Girls or during? After?
During, pretty
During,
much
yeah.
during. I think when that movie went to the film festival, then they were like, "Oh, he's not
Oh, he
just
can
talking
cut."
all this shit." And so I had been in the post producer's ear at Buena Murray about, hey, if an opportunity ever opens up, I'm in there. And one of the things that happened is their trailer editor for a later season of Real World dropped out, and I said, hey, I can do it over the weekend. And if you don't, it was the same deal. If you don't like it,
I was going to say, they paid you?
so anyway, it was.
But you said you can do it over the weekend. So
Yeah,
you
I said
took your
I'll
own
come in
initiative.
over the
Yeah.
weekend. I'll bang something out, and if you don't like it, whatever. It's like I was never here. If you do like it, let me try to take it all the way through the process. And I showed it to them on Monday. They were like, "All right, you're doing the trailer." So I did the trailer, and then a few weeks later, the same person who couldn't do the trailer also couldn't do his episode, and so there was an internal conversation that was had, and it landed on, okay, we think Braden's ready to do it. So that's how I made it officially as an editor in reality. So I did reality and doc for years and years, while also occasionally dipping my foot into narrative, scripted content, shorts. I did another feature. And in 2020, when COVID struck, I kind of took the opportunity to, while all the execs were in their offices or at their homes and not having meetings every second of the day, I started to meet executives through, they were, at that time, everybody was doing panels and stuff, online panels, and I would collect their information and talk to them afterwards just to get a little FaceTime. And one of those executives was Alexis Woodall at Ryan Murphy, and she had a few of their previous editors had been previously talking to her about bringing me on as an editor. It's just we never met until that moment. And then when we met, she was like, yeah, I've heard your name, I've heard about you, and I think you'd be after we talked for like an hour, she was like, I think you'd be a great fit for American Horror Story. And
Season 10?
Season 10. And so that's how I landed on that. And it's kind of, the thing with scripted is kind of, people don't necessarily think you can cut scripted until you cut it. And then they're like, oh, you could
Why
cut
did we
scripted.
hire this
and then
guy
it
earlier?
just, it opened up the doors. So,
So it's going to all come back to Ryan Murphy, I think, during this panel. So, and how did you land real quickly on Black Lady Sketch Show? Was it through Ryan Murphy contacts?
no, actually, that was mostly through editor Daisha Broadway. She had been talking to Robin Thede, who was the showrunner, about me in season 2. So I was actually going to go to season 2, but I did American Horror Story instead. So when season 3 came around, I was like, let me do it, I'm available. And so we went back through the process and they brought me in.
Wonderful. Give it up. Ishai Seton is an Emmy-winning editor in film and television. You might have heard of some of his TV shows he's worked on, like Glee, Empire, Scream Queens, American Horror Story. What season American Horror Story?
I did American Horror Stories, which is the standalone, like, little mini-movie version.
Wow.
Yeah.
Truth Be Told, and Mayor of Kingston, and Loneliness, right? No, Lioness, and Bass Reeves. And the upcoming Landman, which is with, who's the filmmaker on that again that you're working with?
It's a Taylor Sheridan
Yeah,
show
Taylor Sheridan. Yep.
called Landman. Yeah,
Which we love. When is that scheduled to come out?
I believe in November.
November.
It's,
Nice.
Billy Bob Thornton as an oil man in Texas. Yeah.
Nice. Love his shows. He won an Emmy for editing a Disney Plus film called Sneakerella. So that's great. He also was the second unit director and editor of the Netflix film Purple Hearts. And is your assistant here today?
She is.
Where is she? Right here? Stand on
Sarah.
up.
Yeah.
Sarah Bennett? Is
Yep.
that right? Great. Well, thank you for coming. Yeah.
She didn't want to sit in the first row.
We're going to
but-
get some inside scoop about him later, okay? In addition, he edited the documentary Artifact for director Jared Leto, and I'm going to ask you lots of questions about that experience because I worked with him on one of his first breakouts called Rebel Highways. Cool and the Crazy was the name of the film. These were remakes of B movies, 50s B movies. And Cool and the Crazy was the first one we did. We did 10 of them all together. And Ralph Bakshi directed it. Ralph is best known for Felix the Cat or Felix. None of you guys know I'm old. And let's see here. As well as music videos, directing for both Jared Leto and Kevin Bacon. So you're 1 degree. That's your 1 degree. You
That's
did
my
some
1
of his
degree,
music
yes.
videos. Wow. So you truly are 1 degree away from. So guys, you are now 2 degrees away. So isn't that great? Your favorite movie?
I go with Rear Window.
Really?
Yes. I was really into WWE now when I was younger, loved wrestling and loved the storytelling aspect of wrestling. And luckily, somewhere around 12, 13, my mother started exposing me to film. And that kind of superseded the wrestling, which was a good thing. And yeah, just a lot of foreign films and Hitchcock movies and stuff. And I saw in Rear Window, what I love about that movie is that I think it mimics the experience that I love about movies, the sort of voyeuristic look at someone else's life, the way you create what you want out of what you're watching and, you know, form the characters around them. And yeah, I think it's just one of these perfect movies. I love it.
So you kind of started heading into the editing chair back in high school, and rumor has it you cut porno?
In Van
Am I
Nuys.
wrong about that? It's Ex-Porn Star Convention?
In Van
In
Nuys.
Van Nuys?
Yes, in Van Nuys.
No, you're
I
crossing the
started-
stories here.
Yes.
Did you guys meet before? Please tell us a little more about this interesting documentary.
So
you
I
did.
started making films in high school that were not pornos. But I made a bunch of movies. I used the 2 VCR method as well. Although sometimes it would have like a little blip of blue in between the cuts, which helps. Yeah,
nice.
that's really nice. But my buddy had a camera. He had a VHS camera that had this feature that you could mute the audio and play back and record over it, just like muted out the audio and you could record audio. So we would record like a chase scene in camera, cut it in camera, and then go back, mute the audio, and then I'd like turn up the Mission Impossible soundtrack and blast that in my room, and then you could watch back this action sequence with music. It was very exciting. But anyway, all these like short films I made in high school culminated in a movie called The Ex-Porn Star Convention, which was a mockumentary that I made with a bunch of my friends, and we charged people a quarter to come watch it.
Which I think is great. I mean, your entrepreneurial spirit
It
right
was
there,
right
right at
there.
the thing. Like,
It's like
it's
12
one thing
bucks
just to
right
show
there.
it to
Yeah.
people, but you
Yeah.
actually said, no, let's charge and people will pay us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there was a spelling bee video before and a cooking video. Those were free, but yeah.
Oh, so
one.
you did use the name to get money out.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I did that and decided at some point that I was going to go to film school.
NYU
I went to NYU, yes.
and specialized
Studied
documentaries?
directing.
Yeah,
Well, there you actually, it's sort of just a film
everything.
television production, so it's kind of broad. And I did a tiny bit of editing, but I was mostly focused on directing, and I've always kind of balanced the two paths, and I still do. But while I was in school, I worked at a place called Gotham Pictures, and they did like commercials and industrials. It was like a very small little boutique place, and it was during the dot-com boom, and they just kind of kept me on. So while I was out of school, I would go work there, and the guy who ran it would always say, well, if you don't have anything to do, go do the Avid tutorial. And it was when Avid was
Yeah, it was
still a
starting
big
out.
piece of hardware.
Yeah,
and,
it was like a $250,000 machine.
It was
It's so
big and hard to
expensive.
find
Yeah.
at that time. And so, but I just kept doing this sailboat Avid tutorial. I could still like picture the sailboat footage. And I just kept doing it over and over again. And that was like my entire Avid editing education was done there.
So is it true that you would search Craigslist for jobs?
Yes. So yes.
Craigslist, guys.
Well, that was the place to get a job, and that is actually how I got my job with Jared Leto. I moved out here, and I was looking for. I decided to create like some sort of editing reel or editing material that I would not be embarrassed to show people. That was kind of the one barometer. I was like, I don't want to work on stuff I'll be embarrassed to show people. I want something of a quality. So I went on Craigslist, and there was an ad for A-list actor looking for editor, something like that.
And this was before he won his Oscar for Dallas Buyers Club.
It
correct?
was before.
Yeah.
And I went to some like music manager's office in the Valley, and I did not know
Van Nuys.
what it was for. It was in Van Nuys, of course. It all comes back to
Van Nuys.
And anyway, I did this interview, and when I left, I got a phone call, and they said, Jared Leto wants to meet you. Go. So I just like went straight to his house, and he had watched a movie I directed, so I directed like some independent feature films.
Did he know?
And-
Did you know who he was at the time? Because
I
he was
did.
just okay.
I mean, I knew My So-Called Life.
Okay.
That was, yeah.
Yeah. So you were excited then?
No, I was nervous as hell because I was like, I'm going to his house? What? Who? Like, yeah, I was petrified. Yeah, yeah. And anyway, I ended up working on editing this documentary out of his guest bedroom for a year and a half, and then I went on tour with him and his band.
And that's the 30 Seconds to Mars is his band.
Yes.
And that documentary was based on his band or showing him traveling?
It
in
was
the-
about the band 30 Seconds to Mars got sued by their record company for $30
That's
million.
Yeah.
And so it was about the band dealing with this lawsuit and the sort of shady accounting of the music industry, and then mixed with them recording their new album and trying to stay creative.
So then they liked you so much, then they said, come on the road with us while we tour?
Yeah, I went on tour.
So tell us a little bit about this experience, man. I'm just fascinated by this. This is
we
great.
had the band bus, the crew bus, and the edit bus. And so, yeah, you get out of a show in Miami at, I don't know, midnight. Jared would get on the bus. We'd cut in the back of the bus. I was working then on a live concert music video for them. And
Was that Closer to the Edge?
Closer to the Edge. And then we'd do that till, 4 or 5 in the morning. Then the buses would pull over. Jared would go to his bus to go to sleep. I'd get in my little bunk in the bus, and then you go and wake up in Nashville, and then you do it again.
And you had mentioned that. Did you do a little, what I call it, directing or calling out needed shots during that time? Because
Yeah.
they were filming every night, right? And then they get you the footage, and then you'd work on that
so
footage.
mostly we were working on footage we'd already shot, but yes, many times during their sound checks or something, I would go, my assistant would go, there's a bunch of us kind of
Right.
there, but we would go and just shoot a shot of the drummer hitting the drums with water on it in slow-mo or whatever. So we were shooting, we'd put it in, we knew what we needed, and so we could keep kind of developing it as we went.
How long were you on tour doing
About
that?
a month, just about a month.
A month.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta say, guys, this is up on YouTube, and
Oh.
I looked
Yeah.
up this music video, Closer to the Edge.
Okay.
Oh my freaking dude. It's a great
cool,
music
yeah.
video. It's really, really cool.
Oh,
but
thank you.
I have something, and you're the only one I'm going to surprise,
Oh, no.
is I did a screen grab of the
Oh,
end
no.
credits.
Oh, yeah.
And it has him in the cutting room, so I'm going to pass it down, and then, Sharon, if you could pass it around to the audience.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but it was so cool that they actually have a shot of you cutting with
Yes.
Jared there, and it really check it out, guys. It's a really cool music video, and it shows why you're in ACE today.
Oh, well, thank you.
know. It's really well done.
And also in the picture is Stephanie Visser, who is a longtime assistant who is now cutting of mine. I work with her.
Oh,
for a
great!
long time.
Thanks for pointing that out. So, did that help you get into scripted? How'd you get into scripted?
So I got into scripted because I did Artifact. I did another documentary called Our Time, or the Young Americans Project, which was the first movie from director Matt Heineman. Also a job I got off Craigslist. I wish Craigslist was around. Matt Heineman's
yeah.
second movie is Cartel Land, which was nominated for an Oscar for Best Documentary, but I worked on his first movie. And then I was on a doc that, kept running out of money and kept shooting, and it was just getting, just frustrating. And I had a friend, Joe Leonard, who I call Grandfather Glee, and he was working on Glee at the time, and I was just looking at him on the show that he cuts and it airs and millions of people watch it, and then you go to the next one, and then I was like, oh my God, sounds like a dream right now. And so he got me an interview with Alexis at Ryan Murphy, and I came in as an assistant editor and started working on that show. It was a 3-2 show, which means 3 editors, 2 assistants, and so it was a lot of work. It was a big show, and it was a lot to do a 3-2. But you're working with 3 different editors, so I got to learn
It's kind of a good thing. Yeah.
3 different editors' styles, how to manage that, and then actually after the first year, the 3 editors were released, but I was still there, and there were 3 new editors. So within this short time frame, I got to work with 6 different editors very quickly, and got to learn a lot about how they approached editing and what that meant. And so it was very
How did you get on
instructive.
Empire?
Empire.
Because you were doing Glee.
I was doing Glee and
As an
then
assistant.
As an assistant, I got to cut a couple episodes, but Ryan Murphy, that team gave me my first opportunity,
All leads back
which
to
was
Ryan Murphy.
all
Yeah.
goes back, and which was Scream Queens. The first season of that show was my
Right.
first like full season, and then I was doing the pilot of Star, back with Joe with Grandfather Glee, and and I was just on this for a little bit, and somebody, a post producer, came down the hall and said, "Oh my God, somebody left Empire with like very little notice. We need an editor." And I was like, I overheard this, and I popped my head out. I was like, actually, I think I'm done on Friday if you need somebody. And so they brought me in. It was like towards the end of the season, so they brought me in as kind of like a test thing for an episode or two. And I ended up cutting 30-ish episodes of that show, more than anybody else.
4 seasons.
Yeah. And I directed an episode there, too.
Oh,
and
congrats. Yes. I remember that. That was very exciting.
Yeah.
All right, give it up.
Thank you, guys. Oh, sorry.
Sharon Carolyn Miller, ACE, as an assistant editor. Yes, Sharon worked on the OA, which I remember when I met you. I was freaking out because I just loved that show so much.
And you'd
Out-
send me your picture with the creators.
That's right. I got to go to the first season of the OA. Netflix did a small little panel, and there were only like 50 people in the audience. So then the cast was there, and the directors, and and then they wine and dine you afterwards, right? So there I am with my favorite show, hanging out with all the cast. I'm like, yeah, I'm still a film. I don't know if you guys do, but if I enjoy a show or a movie, and just to be able to be in the room, meet these people, I don't know, I just feel so privileged being a part of the community, but also celebrating the community and getting to meet other talented professionals like yourselves. I'm just so happy to be here with you guys today. But I remember when Kelly was cutting Breaking Bad, she would always invite me to the ACE awards and sit at the table with the Breaking Bad table. I mean, I got to tell you, it was like pinch me, and then she invited me to the Golden Globes, pinch me. You know what I mean? It was just great to be part of that posse, and that kind of happens in your career, and it's just really special. But it's not about me, it's about Sharon. So let's see here. So you did Outcast and Fear the Walking Dead, among other titles of unscripted content that shall not be named. She climbed into the ranks rather unconventionally. She transitioned to editing full-time in 2021. As an editor, Sharon is known for her work on the feature film Lupe, which she received her first Eddie Award nomination. She also worked, she's also worked on TV shows 9/11, Chucky, and my favorite, Z Nation, because I did the first season of Z Nation and you did the last season. And what was so fun is there was a room, we did it up in Spokane, a little small town of, I think, 200,000 people, and surrounded by farms and meth
Meth
heads, yes. That's why I learned it was...
Cody likes to call it Spokompton, and I'm like,
Spokompton.
I don't know.
No,
I don't
it's
like
not that
that.
bad. I really enjoyed it, but it was funny driving home some nights real late, from editing, and where they set me up was real close by, but you had to just drive 2 or 3 blocks and over the river, which was really strange. It had a river cutting right through the city, and there would be zombies, literally walking down the street because meth does something. They're just walking like a zombie, and I said, I'm going to remember that. But I will say I got to be a zombie for the season finale.
You
of
got to be a
season
real,
one.
a
Yeah,
real legit
did you?
zombie.
Did you?
Oh no, I had no time for that.
So at least I got to actually be in it. And my shot is this, guys. It went from this zombie chasing the main cast to just sitting at a table doing this. But I got to spend 2 hours in the makeup chair for it, and it was pretty awesome. And I looked great. I'll have to post that picture for you. Let's see here. Let's get back on track with Sharon, because it's not about me, Sharon. It's about you.
I don't know. I'm feeling like. Do you want me to ask you some questions?
Maybe later. You always do at the board meetings. Sharon is passionate about the craft, about her craft, and about the editing community. She serves on the MPEG board of directors since 2017, And during her time there, some of the things she's actually pushed through the board is she co-founded the Young Workers Group, which is now a committee. Congratulations on that. I love that group.
Thank you.
She spearheaded the member-to-member section on the website for job posting, which I think at the time you got a lot of like, everybody was like, no, why do we need that, da-da-da. And before this slowdown, that was like.
It was popping, yeah.
Yeah, people were getting, it was great. People were getting jobs off of it. And so hopefully it'll come back. I think one job posted a month ago and it got like 300 submissions. So they took it down real fast. And then, of course, what's really important is the hours. If you only need under 100 hours.
The MPI hours.
Yeah, the
alert list.
healthcare and the healthcare plan, which I think is just great.
Thank you.
And convincing the board is not an easy thing to do. And she also started and this is the hardest thing that she finally got through. It took quite a year or two.
A year and a half.
Yeah, you were
probably.
very impatient with this, but I just kept telling you, just keep doing it. Figure out a way to get it pushed through. And it's the MPEG Hardship Relief Fund, which has been a huge success. It's helped some of the members that are in the room today. So thank you very much for that.
It was a group effort.
Yeah, everything is. I mean, we always need the board to get on board with this, but it's also when you're passionate and you think the members really need this, and you just, Sharon's like that. She just keeps. By the way, we need a.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. I just keep going.
She, just applying pressure every board meeting, and I just followed in her footsteps and got that dues waiver program going.
That's
so
right. Kudos to you for that.
Yeah, so she really inspired me to push for that, and I figured got a committee together and figured out how we could do it, because the board, if you don't set the path on how to do it, they'll say, oh no, we can't do it. And if you outline it for them, say these are the steps. You ended up talking, I think, to the Entertainment Community Fund, and or
yeah, I mean it's never been done before until it's done.
right.
Anything. And so it's really hard when people are there for a long time and they're just so used to things happening a certain way to get people out of the stuck on the what has been done before. But you could also do it this way, or like always asking, but why, until like drilling down to what really is the reason we're not doing this, and then them realizing, oh wait, no, that's not necessarily a thing, And so I'm just this annoying person who asks, but why, enough times until
I would say persistent, not annoying, just persistent. And that's
Yeah.
what I love about you. And that's what I remember when I first met you. I said, boy, she's barely been, and we'll get into this. We're going to get into this. Just how you got into the business, I love.
Yeah,
so
it's like totally different. I mean, everybody's story is different.
yeah, but you have a unique road. And what's your favorite film?
Requiem for a Dream.
And why?
And
Other than that film was the one that really made me feel like, oh, that's what drugs feel like.
kinda, yeah, but like, and here's the funny story. So I guess my little background about me is that I was born in New York. I lived in New York with my Israeli parents until I was 8 years old, and then we moved back. I moved to Israel, and I lived there for 14 years. And so and then you have to serve in the military when you turn 18. So I served 2 years, and in Israel you choose majors in high school. So I majored.
Wait. You can't just skip over
Oh,
that.
never mind.
Hang on.
I'll
So,
just
let
skip
me
to the
just say-
movie.
No. Let me just say this. No, this is good. But
Okay.
I just want to say, how did firing an M16 put you into the path of the editing room?
Well, okay, so
chair?
that's what that. I guess we'll get. Okay, so that kind of comes in here. Because I majored in media, I hate math as well, and so when I chose media, when I chose majors in high school, I chose theater and media studies, and then I learned how to edit. So by the time I was 16, I kind of knew I really want to be an editor. I tried the other things during my media studies major. All the on-set stuff, and found out I don't like being on set. And so I learned on Premiere before the years as well. And learned I wanted to be an editor from when I was 16. And then I heard that you can be in the military in these filming units and be an editor as your service. So if I am forced to serve in mandatory service, it might as well be something that helps me in my career. So I was able to get into the Air Force filming unit. And they were the only ones who were using Avid. All the other units were using Premiere. So I did the 2-week mandatory, like the minimum possible boot camp, which is like, it's a secretary level boot camp, which is 2 weeks. And I shot an M16 during that time. They train everybody. But because you're an editor and you're in an edit bay, your whole service, they just give you the 2-week expedited boot camp, and then I was an editor for the rest of the time.
Why you did your 2-year service?
2-year service. It was tutorials for mechanics and pilots. I did a feature length film on how to take apart an F-16 engine and put it back together.
That's so. Once your service was done, is that when you came back to the States, or?
Yeah, so my service was done, and you get a little stipend for studies. So I studied After Effects in Israel for 6 months in the evenings with that money. And then I worked at the entertainment channel. They had a branch in Israel, so I edited local celebrity news bulletins every day about like the hot new celebrity couples and stuff, and I wanted to kill myself because it was really depressing. But I saved up money, and then I moved to Israel 6 months, or I moved to LA 6 months after I finished the army.
And then you came out here, and how did you make connection? Like, you came to
can I
LA.
segue back to Requiem? Because that was the story that we missed. Okay, just real quick. So when I was in the military, when I was in the Air Force, I sometimes would stay at my grandmother's house because she lived closer. And so I was watching movies to like enrich my film knowledge, because I didn't go to film school, so like that never happened. So I watched a bunch of movies, and so I would be in the bedroom next to my grandma and watching, and so I watched Requiem for a Dream, and
Wait, on television?
on my computer.
Oh. And it still made that kind of impact.
Yeah, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and that was the first film where I really saw the impact of editing, and it really made me want to be an editor, because I had never experienced a movie where I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and yeah, you could feel what drugs feel like. You could feel like, and I could really sense the editing being the driving force in that movie. And that really inspired me. And then the full circle later, when I was nominated for an Eddie, I was up against the guy who cut Requiem for a Dream. He won, but if I have to lose to anybody, he's a great guy to lose to.
Wow, that's amazing. So, you're still far away from Hollywood. So how did you get out here, and how did you find people to connect with, and
Google searches. So while I was in Israel, I started doing my homework to find places here to apply to. So I would just Google search post houses in LA, and I would just send my resume out. And of course, nobody in their right mind would respond to me, someone who's in another country. And until one of the people who did respond to me was a fellow Israeli who was a post supervisor in a boutique post house. And so he responded to me. He gave me, we talked on the phone. He said, look, I'd be okay. I'm happy to help you, but I'm not going to help you if you're way over there. You have to move here first. Because if he gets me a job and I end up not moving, he gets screwed. So you have to move here first, and then we'll see. And I moved. And then he's like, oh, the economy just crashed. Don't rely on me.
Great.
Because it was 2009.
So what did you do? And who came out with you?
So my dad came for a month, and he was there just for a month to help me find a car, a place to live, and a job. And so we'd drive around to those places from the Google results, and so I hand-delivered resumes. It was looking pretty bleak. And then 2 weeks later, that Israeli guy who said, don't rely on me, called me back and said, actually, I'm post-supervising this reality clip show, and we need a night shift assistant editor, kind of like you know, are you willing to do that for this like really shitty rate? And I was like, yes, I will. And so I did nights in reality TV.
Was it really a shitty rate for you, or were
It
you
was like I think it was like 500 a week.
oh, that's a shitty rate.
Yeah. It's 2009. It was non-union. Yeah, really
It's
bad.
such BS. You know, back when I PA'd in the, I hate to say this, in the 80s and early 90s, $500 a week, right? And still today, people are around 5 to 7. It's like, that's BS. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
You
So
know. So how did I want to know how you met Dan Leventhal, which I think you consider one of your mentors. Of course, he's best known. He's one of the best action editors we have in the biz. Best known for Iron Man and Ant-Man and a lot of Marvel.
a lot of Marvel. Recently, he did Bad Boys 3,
Yep,
and he
yeah.
did Beverly Hills Cops.
So how
That at the same time.
So how did he come into your life, and how did he help you?
So I did reality TV for 3 years, and the nice thing about being a transplant is that I went to visit Israel once a year, and so they'd ask me, how are you doing? What are you doing? So it's kind of a status check for me too, because I'd see myself answering them every year. I'm assisting in reality television. I'm assisting in reality television. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This isn't just going to course correct automatically. I actually have to say no to things and navigate my career. I didn't realize that, you know? And so I just stopped cold turkey. I told the exec producer on the last reality show, I'm like, hey, so I'm wrapping this show and then I'm not coming back. And she's like, you're leaving and you don't have another job? I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving and I don't have another job. Because I knew that I needed to create a new network of scripted people, because all my network was unscripted, non-union, and so I needed to completely detach from that, and that would take time and work, and so it's kind of a job on its own. So yeah, I just changed my, and so I went to, I think Editor's Lounge had these panels, and so I saw him there, but really what happened was I studied After Effects in Israel. I told you guys. I kept getting emails from the After Effects school, and they said, oh, this big shot editor is coming to speak at our school in Israel, and I'm already in LA. And I emailed the head of the school, and I was like, hey, could you introduce us so that when he comes back to LA, he'd be willing to meet with me? And then she's like, oh, yeah, just reach out to him on Facebook. And I was like, really? You could do that? You can reach out to, like, it's not creepy? You know, so that blew my mind. So I wrote, and he's like, his name is Dan Leventhal. He was in Israel giving a lecture. So I totally thought, you know, that he's Israeli. So I wrote in this long thing in Hebrew. I was like, hey, you know, da-da-da-da. And I send it, and I wait a month, and I don't hear anything. And then I don't know why, and I never do this, but I decided to send it again and see what happens. So I sent it again, and then I get a one-line response. Sorry, I don't speak Hebrew. So I translated everything, and then he was really, really nice. He invited me over to his edit suite, and we talked, and he was like, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? And we talked, and then he stayed in touch with me, and eventually he did a Mexican-American indie film that it was at the time called The Jesuit, and now it's called There Are No Saints. And Paul Schrader had written the script, but he then had nothing to do with the project, so they hired a Mexican director. And so he calls me. So he kept in touch with me, and I sent him. I would cut short films for film students, friends of mine in Cal Arts and UCLA. And I didn't want to show stuff that I wasn't proud of either. So I waited until there was a film student short film I was actually proud of, because he kept asking me, what are you cutting? Show me. And I didn't want to show him unscripted stuff because I wanted to do scripted. So I showed him finally this film student short film that I did, and he's like, oh, that's pretty good. Hey, by the way, I need an assistant editor starting Friday on an indie film. Are you available? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm available. I wasn't available. I became available. And then I was like, we edited this we worked on this indie film one-on-one for like over a year. And it was basically this like one-on-one, me and Dan, and him teaching me and mentoring me. And he hired me because of my unscripted experience. He knew I wouldn't delete all the media off the Avid. And he would like teach me the rest. because his usual assist couldn't do the low rate. And so that's kind of how that happened.
Wow. Give it up. So as you can see, all our paths are different. You know, how I ended up in post is I was working on Madonna, Truth or Dare, and that was a very big break. That was my first, what I called breaking into Hollywood, you know, because my name went up on the Cinerama Dome, and I'm like, yes, I made it. But what I did realize during that time, because I was doing a lot of PA work, I did Ruby, which was about Jack Ruby, you know, when JFK came out, they did that Jack Ruby thing. And I was a PA, I was a craft service PA. And which is like the bottom of the bottom. I mean, PAs, they treat better than craft service PAs. And I remember them saying, oh, go in the alley in downtown LA and clean up the trash. So I grabbed another PA, and we're out there, and all these big rats, I mean, these things were the size of cats, were running around. And we're both huddled in the middle of this alley going, fuck, this ain't good. And I go over there, pick up that bag. And she grabs the bag, and there was a rat in it. And she threw it, and the rat stumbled out of the bag when it hit the trash can. And we just both said, we're done. We're not doing this stuff. I mean, these things there were like 20, 30, they were just running everywhere. And so got Madonna, Truth or Dare, because I knew Dan Radford. And he said, hey, you know film and you know video, and I think you'd be a good assist. The team is gone, and I need somebody just to help us finish this film, because we were conforming it to film. It was cut on Touch Vision. VHS editing system that had like 20 or 30 decks, and they would replicate the footage. So each reel of footage they would replicate on these VHS decks, so that you could be anywhere at so it was almost linear in a way. It was like a fake non-linear, I should say, you know, so they could access the footage via time code. And those people were gone, and so I took over, and I was on the mixing stage with Madonna, and I realized, hey, I'm making editorial choices like on the end credits. Talking to the director and the producers and part of the team, getting yelled at for not having Sprite on the mixing stage, which is another story you can ask me later. And I just, you know, handing popcorn to Madonna because she loved popcorn, and I just realized, you know, I think I like Post. And that's how I stayed here. So with that, let's segue into, flip my screen here. Got the wrong hand. Assistant editing room etiquette, leadership in the cutting room, and teamwork. So I'm just going to lump all these three things together. And, of course, Harry, this is your time to shine with your PA story. So you come to LA, you got your first PA job on this feature?
Yeah, it was a feature.
And who was the director again?
It was John Dahl, who
John
did
Dahl?
Red Rock West and all these amazing sort of neo-noir films. I was a big fan, and so I was really, really excited. But before I go into it, I just want to acknowledge that my assistant editor, Irene Chun, is here as well.
Thank you.
Everyone knows and loves Irene, so thanks for coming to support.
And I'm going to hit you up for some insight details. Is any other assistants here that's worked with the, I mean?
Was my American Horror Stories assistant.
Wonderful. And I know I got Rich, well, actually, Rich Prince right here. He assisted me on SWAT. But Sean, you were my assistant on Teen Wolf. That's how we met.
Awesome.
Trying to see if anybody else I worked with. Anybody else? Anybody else work with us? Oh. Oh, wow. You know, that's the one thing that sucks with our cutting rooms these days, because we all work at home, you know, and so we can't be together and meet. So that's great. Yeah, wow.
Oh, really? Yes, that's right. I came into the office. And you work with Stephanie.
I did.
On what?
Aristotle and Dante. Yeah. So I was really, really excited. But just to give you some background, I had left behind a career in tech. And when you're part of a tech startup, it's a very flat organization. So, you know, it's very democratic. A good idea can come from anywhere, and you're very encouraged to contribute because you're generally part of this startup environment. And that's what I was used to. And also, I had left behind a career as a director of product management who became a product manager at this like big tech company. And so I was used to doing presentations to CEOs. And, you know, when I came to LA and got my internship, I was like my purview was getting the California Chicken Cafe order right, or the Starbucks run. And so I guess I could tell you that I had not quite made the psychological adjustment that one needs to make in order to perform well at a PA job. And so my poor first assistant, Christine Goldstein, who's amazing and so patient, like way too patient with me, would be like, Harry, you're 5 minutes late. And I'd be like, yeah, I know, like the traffic on the 10 was terrible. And for me, I was like, what's the big deal? It's just 5 minutes. Like in my head, of course I didn't say this to her, but I was like we're all here. I didn't miss anything. And so it was so bad that like she had to put like the Newt Rockney quote above my computer, which is like, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, don't bother showing up. And I was like, but still, it didn't kind of
put that on your desk.
She still wasn't.
You were really bad with
penetrating
the traffic thing,
this
weren't you?
dense head of mine. And it all kind of came to a head. Even though I thought I was doing a good job and I thought I was well liked, it all came to a head after a friends and family screening, where John invited a number of colleagues to watch an early cut of the film. And after the screening, I had been diligently writing all these notes and suggestions that I had on a notepad. And after the screening, after all his friends left, I took out that notepad and I tried to give John Dahl notes on the cut. And I know that is like I was there, and I'm just as embarrassed by past Harry as you are. But it gets worse because John tried to he smoked cigars. He tried to excuse himself after about the third note, and he said, I'm going to go smoke a cigar. And at the time I smoked, and I didn't take that as like a clue. I was like, great, I'll go and have a cigarette with you, and I'll continue to give you the rest of my notes. So needless to say, after poor John, who's so gracious about it, even with all that, the next day, his assistant...
Wait, I want to know what the best note you gave him.
I'll give you the worst note.
That's what I meant.
The worst note was, I really feel like the second act could use a ticking clock. I wonder if there's some way to give people a sense of how much time is passing before it was a prisoner of war rescue movie. And I can't believe as a PA, I gave a ticking clock note as if I was an executive or something like that. It's just horrifying. So his assistant at the time, his director's assistant, was this woman named Danielle Daly, who was so lovely and so friendly and so kind. And she took me aside the next morning and said, Harry, we really love you, but you have to understand what your role is on this movie. And unfortunately, we have to let you go. And that was my first job on a studio feature. I had interned for so long, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like, my career is over. Like, my Hollywood dreams are over, because now everybody's gonna know that I got fired off my PA job. Who's gonna hire me? But at the same time, it was such a good wake-up call. It was such a shock to the system to say, we're not in Kansas anymore. You're not who you thought you were before coming into the industry, and you have to wake up and sort of read the room, smell the coffee, and understand how best to contribute to the film. And you may have great ideas, but that's not what you're there for. You're there to show up on time. You're there to sort of really understand how best to help. And that was the best thing that Danielle could do for me at the time.
Postscript?
Oh, so about 20 years later, I was one of the editors on Shang-Chi, and we were on the Disney lot, and we were mixing Shang-Chi at the time. And I didn't know this, but Danielle Daly was a very well-regarded post-super on Marvel films. And so she had just come back from Australia with Thor: Love and Thunder, and we were all having lunch together outside, both crews. And during lunch, I sort of yelled out to Danielle, it's like, Danielle, I don't know if you remember this, but 20 years ago, you fired me. And everybody got really quiet all of a sudden, and I said, that was the best thing that you could have done for me at the time, and I'm so grateful for it. You were so gracious and it's so wonderful to see you again. And we had a chance to catch up. And then she was like, oh, like it looks like you learned your lesson. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I did.
And that's the greatest thing. If we make mistakes in our career, especially early on, own up to them. I've always gone back to post supers or somebody that I've butted heads against during the process because of the stress or the wackiness of the show, and I say, I'm really sorry I was kind of a dick or grouchy, and then I'll point out things that I did like about him, because people are never, just one thing. Yeah. Especially great post supervisors. Yeah. They really know their job, but they can drive you nuts because they don't want to spend money.
But I can't tell you how many times the longer that I work in the industry that you're reminded of how relational this industry is. It's like you will see people time and again, 5, 10, 15, and if you're lucky enough to work that long, 20 years later, and it was such a good lesson for me to learn early on to sort of really understand how important those relationships were. So like a small anecdote is like Chris Russell, who's the head of post for features at Marvel, is somebody that I used to send dailies to as the night assistant on Charlotte's Web. And so like just being reminded of like, oh, those people, every email communication, every time you might be impatient, stressed out, rude to somebody, or vice versa, if you're respectful, if you're helpful, if your character kind of comes through in every interaction, those things have a long legacy, and they follow you around. Your brand and your reputation, time and again, I've been reminded of that the longer I work in the industry.
Ishai, you have 3.5 steps that you want to tell assistant editors?
3.5 ways.
Yeah.
3.5 steps to move up from AE to editor.
Yeah.
Okay. First. Yeah. Okay. First, be a really good AE. It's pretty straightforward. But basically, going off what Harry said, it's not just being prepared for your editor, but also interacting with the other assistant editors on the show, the post supers, the showrunners, the producers you encounter, everybody. You basically make yourself the most prepared, most essential person that you can be. You're invaluable to the situation.
And I want you to keep telling your 3.5, but I want you to go into your glee that you were like a therapist.
Oh yeah.
So
yes,
many
many
3.5.
So
that's number 2 or number 1?
That's number 1.
Okay.
And that could include, basically many times as this 3-2 assist on Glee, I felt like I was a therapist to my many editors, because you go from one room and they'd be like, oh my God, Ryan's never going to like this. This is terrible. And I'm like, it's okay. Let's watch it again. Let's look at it. And then I go from that room to the next room and then be like, oh my God, and they're going to fire me. And anyway, it was like that over and over again.
You were the calming voice in the room.
Yes, I was the calming voice.
You weren't
trying
the one
to bring
screaming,
the peace.
going, I can't handle all this work you guys are driving. You're
Right.
Like,
I just
oh,
went into my room and then closed the door and was like, oh my God, what the hell? Yeah. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 is to make your intentions known. And this means that at the beginning, when you are going to work with an editor, let them know that you want to cut. Don't hide that fact, I think. Let it be known, but also don't pressure them to make it happen right away. It's just letting that person know that this is something you want to eventually get to. There are editors who are cool with that, and there are editors who are not. I think both are fine, but if you work with someone who doesn't want to eventually try to help you get there, I don't think you necessarily want to do that job.
Or stay with them.
Or stay with them, yeah, because if you actually want to get to that point, you want to be with somebody who's going to help you get there.
And we'll get more into that when saying no to the cut.
Yeah.
To
Step
cutting.
3 is to shit. Yes, I know. Step 3 is to be, okay, so this is like a bit of a cheat, but I think if you can be in a camp this is TV related, but like if you're in a camp like a Ryan Murphy, a Taylor Sheridan, a Shonda Rhimes, these are places that if you have now become an invaluable part of the fabric of this universe as an AE, then these are places where they have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 shows, and at some point it's just going to be better to go with somebody who knows the language of that world. And you're there and you're set up and they trust you, and therefore they give you. And then step 3.5, the half is just be patient. It's just unpredictable and you don't know. Sometimes you can watch it happen to people very quickly, and sometimes it can take many, many years. And it's just like there is just an element of luck, of right place, right time. But I think if you can be set up for success, then it will happen eventually.
So what I'd like to do, if you guys want to piggyback on that, just raise your hand and we'll hand over the mic. I want this to be free-flowing, the ideas you think of, to add on to that. So anybody have anything they want to add on to that before I go to Sharon? Guess that's it. You got it.
You mean that, Sharon?
No, I was going to go to you anyway. So assistant editing, you mentioned that it's important for assistant editors to have solutions for the editor. And can you tell us on the OA, you were that solution person?
Yeah, it was a tough job. I was the lead assist on this season 1 show where the star and the director are the showrunners, with a Netflix who doesn't know how to do shows yet. So they just give them a bunch of money and not really any producing, reins to rein them in, and not much of a schedule, and be like, have at it, make 8 hours, make an 8-hour show. And I'm the first assist, so I have to figure out all the workflow and everything, first team on. So it was a challenge, but it also presented a lot of opportunity and a lot of creativity, because they also didn't necessarily have all the answers to what they were trying to do or were looking for. And so it presented a lot of opportunity to mock up things. And I think, Eric, I don't know if you remember in season 1, there's a fake class that they take on a computer.
Of course I do.
So I designed all of that, because
Now that I didn't know.
yeah, long story, it fell through with the VFX designing it, and I mocked it up because there was no one to do it, and they were like, great, let's just do what she did, redo it in high res, basically. So it's a lot of creativity in that. And when my editor, our rooms were right next to each other, so when they would sit with my editor, and I could hear the conversation of them looking for a shot. And so I already knew where the shot was, but I didn't want to interrupt their session. But our door was open, our shared door. So I would already have the shot pulled up in my system, and the director could see from the corner of his eye that shot that they're talking about with the editor is already up over there on my screen. And he could kind of see that I'm getting it and I know what they want, and providing value like that. Yeah.
And I think it's very important now that we're working at home to see if you can, as assistants, say, hey, when you're working with the director, can I sign on to the Zoom or onto the Evercast or whatever system it is, and just listen in?
I always have my assists on the Zoom call, so that they're in the loop, so I don't have to then later explain everything.
Exactly, and have them take notes or pull up things, or just be listening in. I like to have assistants in tone meetings with me, because I want them to read the script.
You get tone meetings?
Yeah, on SWAT we did. In SWAT we did. They were very important. It was great they included us, but I wanted my assistant in there, and I wanted them to read the script, because reading the script is very important, especially in television. Well, even in features, when I did Speed 2, that whole crash sequence at the end, it's like, how the hell are they going to do that? But I had to start pulling sound design. I knew I had to do a lot of sound work on that feature film, and this was back in Lightworks days when I only had 8 channels. So I had to pre-mix and mix down and use a DA88, I think it was called, So I have 8 channels, mix it down to 1 channel, then do another 8, mix it down, and, so I had all this, yeah. And note to self, keep all sound design, you guys do, because you can use it over and over and over again on your next projects. But Melinda, for an assistant for you, you are looking for an assistant that can actually add on to your skill sets, or run the room.
Yeah, especially since because I didn't assist in scripted. I came up assisting in unscripted and editing in unscripted. There are holes in my knowledge about what an assist job is within scripted. So I need to make sure that whoever is in that chair knows what to do. And because I can't always tell you what to do, right? So that's, for me, it makes it a little bit harder, as much as I would want to hire sometimes, and I know different people who are trying to get into the AE spot and they want to, they're greener and newer. I can't necessarily bring you on yet because I'm still solidifying my spot within the scripted world. So like for me, I'm going to lean a little bit more on my AE to, understand the continuities, understand those deliverables, how to communicate with the post soup or the coordinator about our VFX turnovers, turning over stuff with music, that like you really understand that workflow. And so like for me, like when I'm talking with AEs, like that's an important thing for me to know that you can demonstrate that like in an interview, like, oh, I know how to do this and I've done that and blah, 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 depending on like your, past experience. So, cause sometimes, for me, it's like, I know I'm going to be leaning on them a little bit more to know what they're doing and also maybe be like, oh, this is how we like, this is how the AEs handle X, Y, Z. Like, cool, great. Now I know a little bit more about like VFX turnovers. Cause I've never done, I've done my own VFX on indie films, but that's not, I didn't turn it over to anybody besides myself, right? And it's probably not the right way. So
I think Larry Bach, my mentor, who I did a lot of features with, he came up in film, so he didn't understand nonlinear at all.
Yeah.
And so he allowed me to run the room. And I would just go in there and update him with, okay, these are the things that are happening, this is what needs to be done. But for the most part, he just let me, communicate to the film assistants, because we were conforming film. And then he would decide. I felt my job was, and I feel this even in television, is that your job is to let the editor just cut. Because they have to be in the zone, and so you can handle all of the stuff that's happening around that, and then just let him know when something has to involve, like the showrunners coming in, or we have to get this done because we have to turn this visual effects sequence over today. And I think that's very important. So I think what you're saying too is also trying to phrase it right, but just basically know as much of your job as you can and be really good at it.
Well, and it's the idea of being indispensable.
That's
right.
Yeah.
How do you make yourself so valuable that like I know they know where everything is, or like Sharon was saying, you're listening nowadays on Evercast, but like I do like it having the assist in there as well, because I'm taking notes while we're screening and I'm talking with the showrunner, the director, but also be taking notes so that I can compile them and look together. Because what if I miss something, or I didn't type it fast enough, or then we're chatting and I have half a locator, right? The other person is like, so you're my backup.
You can't
you're
read your
sure,
note.
Yeah, like can't read my notes. Like, what does this say? And or you're already like you were saying, oh, we need this sound effect or sound design. There, they can already be like, I have this on my list. I'll start getting that for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that you're helping me not have to like tell you everything. If you can kind of do a little thinking for me, then I'm like, okay, cool, right, I can get right back to this. And you make yourself that indispensable, and then you're also like, that allows us to then be able to be like, you're so valuable to me, how can I turn around and like repay that? I think it's part of it too. Then you can be like, I know you want to cut, and now we've worked together, I see your skills, like now we can, when there's an opportunity, can we turn around and do that? But that's because you've made yourself invaluable, and you've found
exactly.
those
You
magical things, and you're like, how can I
pay
the favor?
I want to go to Braden about this, but also I like this. When I was an assistant, taking the notes, I would check off the things I could do. And then after, okay, director left the room. Okay, I'm going to go after this. And then they'd be like, great, go to it. And I think that's really
good.
Yeah, exactly. So Braden, you have said that your reputation is everything, and a good attitude and a focus on solutions.
Yes.
Can you get into what
Yeah.
you look for and running the cutting room and all, just the whole.
Yeah, I think when I interview assists, I think one of the first questions I ask them is, are you interested in cutting, or are you interested in assisting? Because there's a lot of assists who would like to be career assists. There's a lot of assists who would like to be editors. So I want to establish the groundwork there. But I think the more important thing that I'm looking for when I talk to people that I would potentially hire is what kind of teammate they're going to be, both on the technical side, but also on the creative side. Because, you know, on the technical side, it's like we're saying, like, know your job. Even if you're, even I've worked with assists who are a little bit greener, and the ones who stand out are the ones who will seek the solutions if they don't know. Because there's certainly a helping of people who don't know, and they'll, I don't know. Can you figure it out? It's like
I need a sound effect of crushing pills. Can you find me that? Oh, I don't know where to get that.
Yeah, actually, I had a thing on a couple shows where I was looking for a sound effect that's like, I don't know where you'd find it, but I'm just describing a sound to them. I have them watch the scene, and you know, two of these assists that I've worked with on separate things, they go out and record them, and it's like, yes, that's the type of initiative that I'm looking for, and I think that any editor is looking for, because ultimately we have so much to do just in the cut that an assist who is making themselves essential. That's why I love what you said. You checked off things that you could do. That I would be like, yes, thank you. Oh my God, because it's like anything that you can contribute on your own or find an answer to on your own is invaluable to us. But to get back to what your question was, I look at myself and what I would call my shop or my house, which is our edit team, as we have a mission to put our best foot forward and put the best thing out. But also, I want to make sure that when directors or producers come and we're going through cuts, we're going through things that we need to problem solve, which is everything, that I have a positive attitude about it. That they're not coming into my shop and saying, we have this issue here, or something's not quite working, and then they got to hear from me, yeah, you guys shot that like shit, or I don't know.
That's
that
what you
want to
say.
Yeah, it's like I'm not ever trying to say I don't think this will work. I'm trying to say, well, here's a way we could approach it. Even if I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna make this work. It's like you didn't come to me for that. That's not what you hired me for. That's not what an editor is. That's not what we do. We don't point out problems. We find solutions to the problems. We tend to be a last stop. If everything went wrong on production, if something was written in the script that doesn't translate, it's not like it goes through us and then somebody else figures it out. We figure it out. So I try to have a positive attitude all the time about how you can come up with solutions for your director, for your producer, for the studio,
For your editor.
And that's
back
what
into
that's
assisting.
what I want in an assist, is somebody who's looking for solutions for me. Because I have issues all the time too. Sometimes they're technical, sometimes they're creative, and I will go to my assist and we'll watch it together. We'll talk about it, and I look for and seek out assists who can give me suggestions, who can give me ideas, or who can say, okay, I see that problem. Let me look into it, and I'll call you back in whatever amount of time it is. It's like a very proactive approach and a positive approach to finding solutions to problems you're inevitably going to come up with in the process of making something creative.
Yeah, what I would say to the editor, checking off the list, saying you want me if there was a problem area, I say, would you like me to take a stab at this?
Yeah.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
You want me to take a stab at this, and then you can look at it and yay or nay it.
Right.
They'd be like, yeah, great. So that's one way for you guys to start cutting, is to like handle notes that for the editor are going to be time consuming,
Right.
and he's going to be stuck on these other notes. Attack that note and then say, well, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll
Absolutely.
say, that's the best it's going to be for now. Let's put it in, and then let's keep moving forward, and we'll just come back to it later.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's very important at that time, if it does stick in, that as an editor, you compliment your assistant, but more importantly, you point out to the showrunner or to the producers that they came up with this idea. You had your hand raised. Were you stretching?
I just had a quick question. I was just curious, how do you determine that?
Yeah, hang on. Let's do it on the mic.
Sorry, I was just curious. How do you determine that in an interview when you're interviewing people?
I think
Sense it?
that's a great question for one.
Spidey sense.
Yeah, that is a great
Calling
question.
references.
Yeah, I think it's kind of multi-pronged. I think on one hand, I do explain that to them what I'm looking for, but I'm kind of looking for to hear their experience on things. I am calling references and asking them those types of questions, but I think it's also just I feel like in my experience, it's something that comes across or it doesn't. Like you can, after doing it enough, more times than not, I think I've been able to determine when somebody has a similar mentality or if somebody is very, they're in a different place.
But as an assistant too, and I think this is going to segue us into never saying no to cutting. Let me just flip the thing here because I want to say what Harry says. You're not going to be good at editing until you're cutting hundreds and hundreds of scenes or hours of footage. And I think that's something to take to heart as an assistant is like, how are you going to develop those skills that then when you do get a chance to step up, you feel very comfortable doing the work and actually doing it really well to where people take notice.
ABC, always be cutting.
Always be. Hey, I like that. ABC. Write it down. ABC. This is the first time I've heard that.
Short
Have you guys heard
films, short films, like whatever, stuff your friends shoot. You
Yeah.
gotta have something to show people.
Yeah, Braden, a great example of like doing his day job and then cutting at night.
ABC. But can I
Yeah.
make a word of caution here? Because we talked about letting your editor know that you want to cut, and that's one of the 3 steps, and that's all well and good.
Or is it the half step?
3.5. And it's all well and good, and it's great. Let it be known. But then do your assist job perfectly.
Right.
Because, yeah, that's right. But like I've found there's people need to be really cognizant and really kind of, if you've let it, people know, they know, now go and be the best you could be at your job, because what I've found, if you're too eager to cut, you might start slipping on the assist things, and then that's not going to get
Not
the
good.
editors wanting to help you out and bump you up. But if you're amazing as an assist and we know you want to cut, I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm going to fight for you to get that co-editor credit because you've earned it. But you can't start slipping on the assist responsibilities. Like,
Yeah. No, a great example for me was on Bring It On. Larry said, I want you to cut the cheerleader sequences in the movie. It's like, are you kidding me? Yes, I'll cut those cheerleader sequences, and I ended up cutting all of them except for the opening, title song, and then the one where where Kirsten's team, the Toros, thank you. God, it's been a while. I think it's 20-year anniversary now on that film. The Toros screw up their pre-nationals, but everything else I cut, especially the nationals at the end and everything. But I was doing my assistant work on top of that. The editing happened after all my assistant duties were done, and one of those was in the script. It said the blooper at the end. There was bloopers to the song "Oh Mickey," and I could see that the footage wasn't coming in because they had some kind of fake bloopers that they were going to put in. So they shot the "Oh Mickey" sequence, which was playback on set. And I saw that footage wasn't going to happen because we were approaching the last couple days of production. So I started, during the whole production, I started pulling blooper reels, or bloopers, I should say. And so then I started cutting those bloopers into what was shot. And then when Peyton came into the cutting room, I said, so I noticed you didn't shoot the footage, fake bloopers. And he says, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do, I go, oh, well, look at this. And I played it for him. He goes, there it is. You got it. And that ended up being our opening end credit sequence, with the titles and everything. And then I designed what you see in the film is what I sat there and designed. Like, that all came from me.
And that was all on your own, right?
Yeah, on my own.
Somebody didn't ask you to do that.
No,
You took the
no, not
initiative
at all.
to
In
go
that
do
case, no. Just I did it on my own. And And then they said, well, once we're going to make it the opening end credit sequence. I said, okay, I got it. And I put it together, and they said, we love it, you know, and that's what, I think even the font that was used, you know, like, you know, so taking that initiative is what your editor is looking for. And let me scan my notes here, because never say no to the cut. And I think a great example of that is there is this trend that AEs want to be paid to even touch like pre-vons or bloopers or something. And I think, Sharon, I think I'm going to start with you, because you have something to be said about that. But at the same time, for me, and I'm sure you guys can chime in on this, and I want to make this really free-flowing and quick, because we got a lot to cover, and then I want to make sure we have time for our Q&A, because that's where all the good questions are going to come from, including the first one we got. But that's the way for me as an editor doing the pre-vons that you can cut, because that's juxtaposition, that's telling a story in 30 seconds to 60 seconds, that's coming up with creative ways of telling a story. But more importantly, I'm going to let you interact with the showrunner, because if you're doing a good job and you're taking my notes, when I see your first cut and you take my notes and you address my notes, then I get it in front of the showrunner, and chances are it's going to fly through, and the showrunner is going to say something. I'm going to say, you know, Rich, cut that, you know, and that puts you up on, you know, that lifts you up, and they, oh, okay, that was really well done. So, Sharon, in terms of being paid for that.
It's a delicate balance, and
It
let me
is.
remind you, we're in an Editors Guild
I know it
seminar.
is, but how do we mentor?
But
at the same time, how do we mentor our assistants, even if
I
it's
would
not that
say-
give and take? Because I wasn't paid on Bring It On to
and
edit.
you know, and yeah, Braden wasn't for his thing too. So like, I think it's a delicate balance. I mean, generally, like, it's not that the guild doesn't expect you to not be able to get mentored. If you're cutting under an editor who is mentoring you, that makes sense. That's totally fine. But it gets, you know, you deserve better conditions if you're working for a producer or for the show. If you're cutting something that's gonna air, you know, then you deserve pay or any, you know. But because it's a delicate balance, and you want to get mentored, and you want to get seen, and you want to get exposure to the hiring, to the producers, I would say you could negotiate, or, you know, and you could be creative about it. I had post producers where I negotiated on unworked weekends. You know, think about their budget and their line items. Maybe they can't bump you to editor classification, but maybe they can pay you Saturday, Sunday, but you don't really come in, and you get those extra days as extra pay. Maybe they can give you overtime that you're not really there, but it's additional, you know, pay. Negotiate. Don't just do it, because, you know, you should at least ask. Some people don't even ask, and you never know. I've negotiated a ton of stuff for you know. I was on a show once, Chucky. I was on a show once where I negotiated co-edit credits before the show even began, because they really wanted me to assist Randy Bricker, and for us to be the first team on. And it was kind of a matchmaking from the producers, and I recognized my leverage, and I was like, okay, you want me here? I want to be able to co-edit at least 2 episodes. And I didn't even know the editor yet. But recognize your leverage, recognize your worth, and find a way to get better conditions for the cutting. Ideally, a bump. And if they say no, work from there. But don't just, you know, your cutting is worth something.
Harry?
I think, you know, one of the critical things in all of Sharon's anecdotes is that she seemed to not be antagonistic, but to be on the same side relationally with the people that she was speaking with. In other words, I think that's a really critical distinction, is, are you on the same side of a problem? There's a need for additional editing. They don't have the budget to pay an editor. How do we solve this problem together? Is there a different way that you can compensate me? Is there a way that this relationship can continue to be solutions-oriented, as Braden was saying, versus antagonistic, versus saying, like, you know, I'm not going to do it unless you do X, Y, or Z? Because that's something that I've thought through time and again, is when I've been sort of hoping for something or been disappointed or you know, trying to break into something, you know, for the first time, I've always tried to think of like, what is the position of the post super who's going to hire me? What is the position of the editor who I'm speaking with? Because, you know, if you don't have credits, for example, in something, like the post supers, what they're gauged on in terms of like whether they've done a successful job, whether they take a risk for a junior assistant or a junior editor, that's very low on what they're evaluated on. They may personally want to do it and have a culture of doing it, but like their budget has to come in on time. The show has to come in on time. They have to make their dates. I mean, those are the things. And so, and they're constantly being exposed to risk. So they're very little incented to, even though they may like you, to give you that opportunity. So having that opportunity and being sympathetic, having that mindset and being sympathetic to what are their goals, how do you help with their goals, is a great way to stay relational in those conversations.
Making you a valuable team member. Any last little things before you? Yeah.
I'm just going to give an anecdote. I was recently on a show where I had planned to do a co-edit with my assist, who I think is a great editor as well. And on this particular show, we did not negotiate it beforehand. And so when we got to the episode, I brought it up to the showrunner, I brought it up to the producer, because he had cut a couple scenes in previous episodes. And I would always make it a point to point out, yes, my assist did these, he did this, it's great, da-da-da. I would have him go through the entire notes run, or at least as far as it could go, that was reasonable, and make sure that they knew that he was doing those scenes. And so when we got to the next set of episodes, I told the showrunner, hey, he's going to co-edit this next episode with me. I want your blessing. Gave his blessing. Told the post soup said, it's not in the budget. We can't do it, because it was a union show. And on a union show, at least to my understanding, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the co-edit, for it to be legit, they have to be paid as an editor, and they could not pay as much as we argued, as much as, you know, argued in a good way. As much as we argued, as much as the showrunner tried to step in, they just did not have the budget for it. And we knew that before we started that episode, and it was like, okay, so I gave him, what I told him was, okay, this isn't going to happen. This is obviously something that we would have had to negotiate beforehand, and they're not going to let us do it here. So let's not spin our wheels here. So what do you want to do? Do you want to purely assist? Do you want to cut a couple scenes? I don't want you to cut, you know, 30-40% of the show, because you're not going to get paid for it, and I don't think that's fair. But do you still want to cut something? And he was like, yeah, of course. And so he ended up cutting like 3 really major scenes, and ultimately it's just for his reel.
Right.
But ultimately it's for his reel. He's got huge name actors that he can go to people with examples of. He's got me as a reference. He's got the showrunner who loved what he did and will absolutely pine for him on the next thing. So there is value in putting yourself out there like that. But at the same time, yes, you do have to make sure it's a fair balance, because I don't think it would have been fair for me to say, okay, we'll do it anyway. Cut half the show for none of the pay and do your job as an
So I
assist.
think the lesson is pre-negotiate.
Yes, that's what I learned. I didn't know that was a rule. So
and then also keep in mind these things can go on your reel, because I was mentoring for Larry Bach, and I did get additional editing on Bring It On, but some of the other films we did, I didn't. And all I did was just put it on my first assistant editor, additional editor, you know, because I would always cut 10 minutes of every feature we did together. He would give me 10 minutes every feature, and it was great. It was this great training ground for me. Even if I didn't get the credit, it still went on my reel, you know?
And that's worth
And that's what's important, yeah, especially today, since you just type in your whatever address it is, and there it is. There's your work right
Yeah.
in front of
Yeah,
whoever
'cause
you need to get in front of.
I remember when I was trying to break into scripted, I talked to several producers, and they would ask me for samples, and I'd show them samples of things I had cut with named people in them.
Right.
And I remember one of the comments was, "Oh, okay, they trust you to cut these folks."
Right.
And it was like, yeah, and that made such a difference. So if as an assist, you can, if you're working on a show with anybody in it, and you can show, hey, I cut this, there's a level of trust that unlocks that may not previously be there. So it is worth something.
Yeah, and always pick the scenes, assistants, always pick the scenes that are like kind of contained
Yes,
and very
yes.
relevant, like a very relevant, like on Hell on Wheels, I just got off of a horrible feature, and I just needed my union hours because it was non-union, so I got an assistant job on Hell on Wheels. I dumbed down my resume and did it. And the editor, towards the end, this was the last season of Hell on Wheels, and he says, he got behind. And I'm like, keeping my mouth shut because I don't want to cut. I just want to be assistant, do my 9 to 5, get out the door, right? And he's like, well, I want you to cut the death sequence of this main character that's been on the show from the start. Oh, my God. And I'm like, all right. And then proceeded to cut it. And then not knowing, since I had dumbed down my resume, he didn't know my experience, he proceeded to tell me why my scene wasn't working. But it was so cute because that's what it ended up being at the end, because that's all you could cut out of it, because he wasn't familiar with the footage. But segueing back to that, I got to cut the death sequence of this main character that had been on. So look for material that you know is going to be really good for your reel, too. That's a bottled scene or 2 scenes that really shows, like, wow, that's really good. You did a great job with that, and of course has actors in it. So segueing off of that, because we are, as you can see, the hourglass is ticking down here, and I want to make sure we have the Q&A. What are we doing here? What time is it?
That's 10 minutes to 5.
10 minutes to 5. So at 5:30, at the minimum, I want to. No, I have to have 5. We have to break into Q&A if we can. But what's more important, so let's try to be as succinct as we can, and let's try to feed off each other, because the most important thing right now is networking is the next subject I want to come at. And I'll just tell a real quick story. Winnie Holzman wrote the book for Wizard. I did an ABC Family show with her, and she was coming into the cutting room. I was very excited because I had seen Wicked on Broadway. And so what I did, I went on the internet real quick, and I looked up, and I saw that she was knitting. And I went, that's really a weird why is she knitting, in all these interviews? And so when she came in, we broke for lunch, and I said, so I see that you're a knitter. And she was like, how do you know that? And without saying, well, I kind of did all the research, I just said, well, I saw a documentary on Wicked, and, it showed you knitting. And she told the most amazing story about how she was so stressed about the show because, cracking that egg was very difficult. And now we've got this major motion picture coming out on it. I'm so excited for it. But she said I would just sit there and knit to calm myself. And then I gave it to the director of the play at the end. And even though it was longer than it should have been, it was kind of whacked out, it's a special gift to him because that was created during. So it became the story, basically, and I was seeing. And I think that's the important thing when you're networking. Let's, who wants to start on that? Like some of the things of networking, what's important when you're meeting one of these guys for the first time, making an impression. Who wants to start? I think, yeah.
One thing that I always, I meet with a lot of folks, and one thing I always end with is to encourage people to get good at telling your story. And especially if your story can convey some aspect of a character trait or some aspect of who you are that they would want in their cutting room or that they would want to help along. And the more personal, the more specific it is, the more memorable it is, the better. And I don't think we practice that very much. We're just, you don't sort of like go around to your friends and say, hey, can I tell you my origin story of why I love film? But it's definitely something that's super helpful because I thought if I am meeting with somebody, I need to research all their work and get to know it and to be able to speak insightfully on it. But like in some ways it's ego stroking to a certain extent, and it's nice that you've watched the work, but it doesn't tell me anything about you other than you're good at homework, which is great. It's a nice quality. It means you've prepared. But I think in order to remember you, in order to sort of say, oh yeah, that's that person that, I remember an anecdote somebody said that like he used to work construction with his Latino uncles, and there was a certain time in which he was considering what to do next, is that the uncles are like, you have to go and take a shot at being a filmmaker, because like, you have this like rare opportunity to do something other than this, and that was a very meaningful story, and it was so specific. It told me where that person was from. It told me that they're from a loving family. It told me that like, that they're used to sort of life outside of the cutting room and how enriching that can be. And
how do you segue into talking about you? Because that's kind of hard to.
I think that's why you practice.
Or
I think
is it starting with a communique of your favorite film? Now that we know, that's one reason why I had everybody mention their favorite film, because it's like a door opening, but maybe segueing into a personal story on that.
I think that's part of the art. Is like for me, it's having a quick sense of where I came from, what the stakes were in coming here, and to try to do it in a very succinct way. And if you can find common ground with somebody, like you're from the Bay Area, I'm from the Bay Area, you come from an Asian American family, I come from an Asian American family, you come from an immigrant family. If you can find that common ground as a way of introducing that part of who you are, I think all the better. And so that's one thing that I encourage people, is like practice telling that story, practice having an origin story that will make you memorable. It's hard to do that, obviously, when you have 2 minutes at a meet and greet. But if after the meet and greet you say, hey, can I have a coffee with you? Can I Zoom with you? It's during that time in which you want to sort of tell some part of who you are through your questions and sharing that part of who you are.
So would you say it's, because I always say know who you're talking to, and even if you run into somebody that you didn't know you were going to run into, you go on IMDb real quick while somebody else is talking to them, and go, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And then you go, I just want to ask you blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then you can open yourself up to, hey, can we do lunch or whatever. Does anybody want to Sharon?
I have found, I've done the networking thing. I'm the social butterfly that goes around. But I have actually found that people want to work with good people, and they want to know that they're good people. And so I think the best networking is volunteering for a cause that's bigger than yourself with a group.
At the Guild.
At the
for
Guild.
one example.
Maybe there's signs around here that I'm supposed to point to right now. Volunteer is a little less active. It's more on a need basis. But committees are a really great way to get to know people for a long stretch of time. Like, you meet frequently, and there are some really big editors on some of these committees and assistant editors, and you never know, it might lead to a job, but really you're not doing it for the job. You're doing it to accomplish something together, a bigger goal. And then that builds stronger bonds, because you can then have this, like, you were in the trenches together. Like, remember when we struggled to get that dues waiver program made?
Right. That being on the board, and on committees has been very valuable to me for creating those friendships. David White's back there running the.
Shout out to David.
Yeah, running it. And then Hudson Miller, our vice president, was here fixing up the sound and getting this room ready. And I think they came in to help me because they knew I was going to moderate the panel. So it became that, like, can you please come and make sure these things are going to happen?
Here's a quick anecdote. I'm with an agency now, Innovative, and
show off.
All the people here are represented too.
Yeah, but not by Innovative.
Okay. Eastern. Well, there's other. Yeah, there you go. So
Innovative. Sorry, it's a little higher.
It's a little higher.
Yeah. And
So
Craig,
anyway.
wait, Craig, the best dressed agent in town, is part
you're
of
hoping he watches this, aren't
Yeah,
you?
exactly.
Anyway,
I love that agent.
They got me an interview with on a show. I didn't end up getting the show for whatever reason, but they told the show that I was the person who had the idea of doing the car painting during the 2021 negotiations.
Yeah, and that was a great idea.
Or was it the car painting, or was it the? No, sorry, it was the. Remember, it was the healthcare hours. Was the health? The car painting.
She's done so much.
The car painting was when I interviewed them. They were like, "That's you. I've seen these cars all over." But the healthcare hours, a producer asked me about that in an interview, and I was like, "Wow, there's a kind-hearted producer out there. That's like unbelievable." But yes, there are good people out there who want to hire good people. So do good, and then you'll be able to talk about it. But it's not really for the benefit of getting jobs. It's for the greater good.
Anybody want to do it? Yeah, Melinda.
I'll say something as someone who is like introvert, and I hated the idea of having to network or any of that. And it is a skill that you have to develop, just like working out. You got to go to these things, and you got to like sit there. It's like your first day at a new school. I don't know who I'm going to eat lunch with. Will anybody be my friend? And talk to people. Or if you know people that might be there. I think people also put a lot of pressure on sometimes going to something like Edit Fest, where there might be a bunch of editors, or there's certain name people there, and people get real hung up about like, I have this one opportunity to meet this person, and I want them to be my mentor or something. And you have to just. This is what I've told myself, so it might not be a completely thing, but this is how I've worked through my fear. But you just want to go and make friends, right? You want to meet, like, we're all editors. We all love TV or movies or something. How do you connect with people on a personal level, I think, too, is like, what do we connect with? What have you watched lately? Any good TV shows, any films coming out you're excited about? Like, make those little connections. And then follow up, right? Like, don't think that this 2 minutes that you may run into somebody at Edit Fest you're gonna tell them you want to be whatever, and they're gonna be like, yes, be my assistant, and then I will make you an like. Let's just connect on a personal level, and then you follow up. And that's the one nice thing about social media is it's so easy to reach out to somebody on Instagram or Facebook. Get an email off a website, and like, oh, we met at such and such, and we're both from the South. Like, I met an AE who was also from North Carolina. We started talking about the beaches we used to go to as kids, and develop that relationship, because it is personal. And like you said, it's your team. This is your house. Like, you want to bring people in that you want to work with, but don't put all the pressure on networking of like, you've got one shot. It's a long game. It is chess, not checkers, right?
Yeah.
We're running marathons. So you may meet somebody now, and something might not happen for 2 or 3 years, but you've developed a friendship, and then they're like, oh no, I want to work with this person now, and I think they're ready, and we've been talking for a long time, and like, now's the time. You don't know what their timing is either, but like, don't put so much pressure on it, and just like, you're there to make friends. And then the next one you go to, you're going to know a few more people, and then you're going to make more friends. And then these events actually become like fun to go to. And you're like, oh, it's Edit Fest. Who am I going to see this week? And
it's always funny. I get teased, and I'm sure Sharon gets teased. We get teased like, oh, you know everybody. And it's like, no, I'm just trying to go around and say hi to everybody, because I don't normally get to see them. And it's great to see all of us outside of the cutting room and celebrating. And the funniest thing I've noticed is editors are alcoholics. Jeez. We like the party, let me tell you, because we never get out of the cutting room, But a real quick story on that, I just want to finish on it before we segue into Q&A, because I really want to get to that, is Rich Prince here. Raise your hand. Yeah, be embarrassed. He did a great job. He emailed me and said, I want to do coffee. And I said, I'm really busy on the show. I don't have time, da-da-da. And then a couple months later, he emailed me again. Hey, can we still do the coffee? And I said, you know what? You caught me at a really good time. Let's go do it. And as we were out having coffee, I realized that him and I had a lot in common, the way we've come up in the ranks. And he's an editor, too. He really is. But he's working as an assistant. And I was having trouble with my assistant at the time, and I replaced my assistant with him. The timing was perfect. And the one who follows up is the thing. Always follow up. And know that we are all very busy. And it's not that we don't want to meet with you. It's just something is going on in our lives. And just check in a couple of months later and say, hey, can we still do that Zoom? Zooms are really great because it doesn't take much effort.
Zoom is the best because there's no commute time, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know I can take an hour for lunch
Right.
if I really want to, and I don't have to factor in the traffic. Like, yeah. So Sometimes coffee's a little too hard, or are you going to meet me at 7
Well,
a.m.
yeah,
before work? Like,
well, and make
thing.
sure too, if you're asking to meet an editor, you go to where they are and where you know. So if they're in Santa Monica, you have to drive out to Santa Monica. Make it easy for them to meet with you, and also that'll give you more time with them because they're not shipping. And that's what Zoom is good, I guess, because you get more time. And then just real quick, you taught me that great trick on Zoom when you don't have an account.
Oh yeah, this is a accidental hack. Zoom. If you get bumped off, it won't let you back in for 10 minutes.
Because you have the free account.
Because you have a free account. But if you end it before you
1
get
minute
bumped
before.
off, you can come back in.
Right away. and
I
keep
had
going.
discovered that, like, because now they won't let you come back in for 10 more minutes. But
Right.
if you leave, you can reuse the link.
And we did that.
Please don't come for me, Zoom.
All right, at this time, I want to do the Q&A. So there is a nice blue X over there. And Sharon, you have the mic right there that you can hand to him. We can take questions online. So hopefully you guys online can just post in the chat. And then Sean, are you going to ask your own question or an online question?
Currently, there are no online questions. So
Okay,
if
so
anyone in the audience wants to.
Are you going to start us out or?
Oh,
You look like you want to ask you look like you want to ask a question. So just line
No
up
pressure.
behind Sean. If you want to ask a question, line up behind Sean. Don't be shy.
Actually, I
Shake
just want to
hands.
shortly share something. I used to work in reality. When I crossed over to scripted, people expected me to know what I'm doing. So when I was in scripted, I worked my way all the way up to lead. And as a lead, I had to be responsible for vendors and turning things over. And so anyway, I had to know all this stuff. So I'm just saying that to say that sometimes I don't think people necessarily realize that it's not just doing your job. You have to go above and beyond. And the producers see that, they're like, okay, I could trust this person. You know, we'll know what to do when they get in the chair. Now let's see if they have the creative chops as well as being a department head at the same time. So just wanted to share that. All right.
Next.
Can I say real quick, based on what you said, Sean, that it is so much of it at every level, editor, assistant editor, even PA, so much of it is about trust, because at the end of the day, the creative process, anybody who works in it, it's a fire all the time. It's a fire. And you want to be it's not like you can dodge the fire. You want to be in the fire with people who you want to fight with and people who you trust. And so
Call it the
you know,
trenches.
yeah, so that's part of, what I'm saying, what I think everybody is saying about having the right attitude and taking initiative and doing all that stuff as an assist. It's like you are saying, you can trust me with this. And I want to be able to trust my assist so I can say, I'm in a fire right here. Can you put out this fire here? And I can trust that they'll do it. And producers look to that, directors look to that. We all look to just trust one another because it's hell.
Be the solution, not the
Right.
problem.
Yeah. Really quickly, I've been in quite a few fires. And one fire I want to say is one time my producer came to me and said, hey, we need this by this time. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, the editor's working on this. Let me see if I could talk to them, see if we could work something out. And then I had to work out something with the editor, the vendor, and the producers, and they all agreed to it. So but I was ahead of it before the producer even came to me. I kept
Right.
paying attention to the schedule.
Anticipate problems.
Anticipate, yeah, and then try to help solve them. Yeah. So I think we have our first person here.
Yes.
Hi.
And one thing, you were on the D2. You served as a delegate for us
Yes,
this
I
year.
did.
And yeah, first
First
time
time.
delegate, and that was so great.
Yeah.
I will say that was so great for me because she's been volunteering on committees and or doing events and stuff, and that's how we've started to know each other. And then
Yes, Eric.
being up there in Lake Tahoe was a great opportunity to really get to know you, and I appreciate your helping out the guild, but more importantly, that's getting to know you in a social situation where we had time. So thank you for being a delegate this year.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Yeah, okay. By the way, my name's Trisha Rodrigo. I am an editor in Unscripted and docuseries. I am also the co-chair of the Pan Pacific Asian Steering Committee. Not that it's not about me. Anyways.
Yeah, right now it is.
But my question is, I mean, I've seen assistant editors get so frustrated with being assistant editors over time that, you know, it's like almost assistant editor burnout. How do, like, what's your recommendation for assistant editors who want to keep going but feel like they just really have been doing it for so long that they would love to cross over, but something is stopping them? I don't know what it is. And, you know, how do they keep going to keep being the best assistant editor, best helping hand, and also keep that motivation to cross over without just saying, I just quit this industry?
So, hi, Trisha.
Hey, Sharon.
I also know her. She recently volunteered on the shoot for the music video we just did. So
Call your rep.
call your rep. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. But I'm so glad you asked that, because the one thing I didn't get to talk about in this panel about getting into the chair is how I got in the chair. And I got in the chair in a very unconventional way that is so relevant to what you were saying. So on the OA, I put my heart out. I did above and beyond. I did everything right, and I didn't get promoted for various reasons beyond my control. That happened in a bunch of other shows, and I got really frustrated, and I got burnt out, and I was depressed. And I didn't know what to do. And then at some point, I just had to say no. So I did the OA in 2016. In 2017, I said, I'm staying home. I'm going to network, but I'm going to cut a feature for nearly nothing on Premiere and learn Premiere for the first time in the process. And it so happened that feature that I cut for the first feature for first time credit, later it went through the film festivals and then later got bought by HBO Latino, and then I got an Eddie nomination from that first feature. And it wasn't even for that. It was just to be able to start. I'm like, all my editors kept getting fired or replaced, or, you know, that whole thing where you work with an editor and then they eventually like bump you up and all that. That never happened to me. I kept bouncing around shows and all. It just would never work out. And so I was like, screw it. I'm going to make my own path. You know, I'm going to go and cut an indie feature. I'm going to, you know, you got to throw out, you like make stuff so that it
But
can.
you made your own path. In reality, you said, I'm done with reality. I'm going to move into scripted.
Yeah, and it keeps rerouting your path, and it's not just a linear path. So then I had to so I cut that feature, great, but I still needed hours for healthcare and pension, so I had to go back to assisting. And I to join the union, I had to go back to reality. So back to reality assisting nights. There's all these factors.
You didn't beat yourself up over that. You just realized that's the means to getting to my goal, where you kept your eye on the ball.
But it's not one linear path. You keep having to bounce back and forth, and if it's not working out and you're not getting promoted in a show, go cut an indie. Save up money so that you have the freedom to say no and do what's right for you.
And that's important, saving money.
Yeah. But that's. You have to find if the relationship with your editor is not leading to you getting bumped up, maybe you need to switch editors and assist somebody else. If there's all sorts of things that you need to change in what you're doing to maybe try to change the outcome.
If you're an editor in scripted, be prepared to go back down to assisting an editor in reality, be prepared to go back down to assisting in scripted, and it might take you 2 or 3 years, to get up there.
Yeah. No, I'm asking for all the assistant editors out there that gets exhausted and feels like they can't make it.
Ishai, did you want to add?
You
to
can.
Yeah, I was just gonna also say, it's tough because you like Braden said, you want to stay positive for the environment. I think that's really important because you don't want to bring that sort of negativity into the job.
Right.
So
right.
I think it's also on editors to make sure that their assistant editors feel seen and appreciated, because I think a lot of times I've done that job and it's tough and it can be really grueling, and a lot of times it goes unappreciated, or it feels that way. And so I think it's important to make sure that your assistant editors feel seen and appreciated. Yeah.
Okay.
Sean, do we have an online question or?
No,
okay.
In person.
All right.
Come on, make sure you speak as close.
Okay. Hi.
Come on up to the X.
Oh, hi. Hi, hello, I'm Imani. So my question is, I'm coming from unscripted reality and moved into VFX assistant editing, which is different in both ways from like scripted editing. But with unscripted reality, editors don't really have assistants. I've always just been the assistant for the entire show. Like it's just one assistant, like 5 editors or whatever. Where scripted, there's like you have an editor. And I don't know how to like reach out to scripted editors, especially when I ended up going into VFX assistant editing. Like, how does that connection get made? Because I want to be a VFX editor, so it's very different. And I'm not sure if any of you know like how that works.
So, for clarity, you want to be a VFX editor,
Yes.
and you're a VFX assistant.
Yes.
So you're assistant right
Yes.
now. VFX assistant.
Yes.
Do you work with a VFX editor right now?
No, so that's the thing. Even coming from unscripted.
Oh, bing, Sharon. There's talk on mic, Sharon. Yeah, we've just got. This is the greatest thing. We've just.
You know, we recently negotiated a new VFX editor.
We just got that classification. So if you're an
it's
assist,
hairy. They're still figuring it out,
yeah.
but you're on top of it.
I did see that they're still like negotiating on contract services and all that stuff.
Anyway, talk to a field rep, please.
Yeah, because what's going on right now is now that we have the classification, we are saying that if your show, and without saying your show, how many visual effects do you do per you do how many episodes and how many visual effects? Like
the last show I was on was 8 episodes and there were several thousand.
Okay, so talk to the field rep, but more importantly, what's going on now is you would be bumped up to the visual effects classification automatically because of the amount of work that's on that show.
And that's her primary job.
And that's your primary job, yeah. So that's how you're going to get promoted into VFX editor. It's not a yeah. Well,
I don't want to take all the questions, but in this case, because I was a VFX editor for a season of a show, as an assistant editor, and you're trying to make connections to be a VFX editor. Facebook groups, meetups, reach out to other VFX editors that you admire. Look up who was a VFX editor on this thing that you liked watching. Reach out to them on Facebook. Sharon Smith Holly, Scott Janish is so cool and happy to mentor people. Reach out online and email.
All right, we have another in person.
Hello. Hi, I'm Joanna. This is funny because I kind of have a question that relates to both the last two. I'm working as a VFX editor right now, but I want to be editing. And I guess my main question is advice for how to navigate the current situation with work not really being as available. Because as much as, people want to move up and be cutting, there's just not as many jobs. And I was kind of on a trajectory to start cutting full time end of 2022 and then had to pivot to VFX editing. And now I'm in this weird spot where I don't have a mentor editor because I'm VFX editing, but I'm still trying to get into editing. So just curious about any advice on navigating weird work slowdown situation that's out of our control.
So tough.
Well, I think I've actually talked to you about this briefly, but
probably I've talked to at least 4 out of the 5 of you.
So, I mean, it's as far as the current situation. I mean, I think we're kind of all in the position where it's we got to be patient because we don't necessarily know what's happening. I feel like for the last year I've heard, it's going to start next season, and then we get to the next season and it's actually, and now it's
survive till 2025.
So it's kind of you're a little hemmed in terms of just having to be patient and knowing that it's not something you're doing wrong. It's just that it's the weird time. But that said, if you want to get to editing, I mean, the most important advice I ever got about editing was the most simple advice. I met with a director, and this was very early in my career, and he told me, directors direct, writers write, editors edit. So if you want to be an editor, you got to get your hands on everything you can possibly edit, shorts, sizzles, trailers, commercials,
film school
indie
projects.
features, yes, student project, like anything that you can edit, not only for the practice of editing, because we were just talking about this earlier about how much you have to do to become a good editor, how much you have to edit. How many, what were you saying?
10,000 hours.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, I liken it a lot of times to playing a sport, playing basketball. You're not going to get a good jump shot if you're just watching people shoot. You have to be in the gym putting in the hours every single day until it becomes natural to you. And I think cutting is the same thing, where you have to always be in the practice of cutting whatever it is, because it not only does it become a little more reflexive to you, but also you start to learn how to problem solve differently, but also people start to see your work, and you never know who you're working with. Like if you take my story, the short that I cut for this assistant director probably springboarded my entire career. And so you never know who you're doing shorts with, or who you're doing any project with, that, you know, they may not be the person to pluck you out and say, okay, take on this scripted project, but they may know somebody, or they may serve as a reference, or like, you just don't know where these connections come from. But they only work if you're cutting. They don't work if you're observing. So
Yeah, I agree with everything that Braden's saying. The only thing I'd add to it is, when we talk about editing on the side, or when we talk about editing, you know, nights and weekends or whatever, we think about, we have an image of cutting, but so much of the value of doing as many projects as possible is so much about the relational work we do as editors. Yeah, you have to be able to make a good cut. Yeah, you have to be able to, you know, structure a project well, but you also have to know, like, do I have to win this argument about this cut now?
Great point.
Or will it come out in the wash once an audience watches it? How do I help the director control who sees the cut? Because you've got producers who funded this short, and they're going to have an influence. Like, how do I navigate the politics of that, of what to say, what not to say, how do I give them advice? You know, I was given, so I had to wear so many hats as somebody who cut indie features. Like, I was given a bid to say, is this enough days for color? You know, and you're like, you know, when you're a starting editor, you're like, I have no idea. But because you're all of a sudden wearing every post hat there is, you have to sort of learn how to answer that question. You have to sort of understand the post process as well. And so one of the amazing things about working on as many projects as possible is that it teaches you all of the things outside of cutting that ultimately makes you a good department head, and ultimately makes you a good editor. And so many of those things has nothing to do with cutting, and everything to do with relationships, process, politics, etc. What I would say specifically, Joanna, is that there's no direct path from being a VFX editor, which is more of like an organizational and hands-on compositing creative position, to being an editor, other than the skill sets that you're learning in terms of compositing, in terms of being able to interface with VFX, are going to be absolutely essential skills once you get into the editor's chair. And that's the other thing that I would say to encourage people who are frustrated, is that, you know, the thing that I learned, and having done this for 20 plus years, is there's nothing that's wasted. Every process that you see, everything that you endure, every problem that you witness being solved or not solved, because you see people doing things poorly, will help you once you get into the chair. And so I know it's frustrating to feel like, well, my real self isn't happening, but everything that you're learning, as an assistant on the various jobs that you do will be the thing that actually makes you more essential as a department head, as an editor. Because I've seen a lot of people that got promoted early, and they stumble around a lot of the time. They upset people a lot of the time because they don't appreciate what everybody does. And they may be able to cut, but they don't understand how to lead a team. They don't understand what process everybody else does. So I just want to encourage people who are grinding to say that everything will matter. All of the experience that you're garnering now will ultimately make you a much better department head.
Thank you.
I think real quick to take this opportunity that the industry has like had a major 8.0 earthquake, and things are really changing under everybody's feet. So once again, don't take it personally. Figure out how to survive at the end of the day, and learning new software, sharpening your skills, learning AI, growing your contacts. You're here today. This is great. You're going to meet a lot of people today. You know, and in terms of being a visual effects assistant, right? Editor. Are you doing any previs work?
I mean, we're close to the end now, but
Yeah.
I wasn't like making I was doing a lot of like mocking up
Right.
temps and making temp graphics
Right,
and
but
like all that kind of stuff.
moving into previs and start cutting those sequences.
Mhm.
You know, like if you can start cutting those sequences in previs, and all of a sudden that's editing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're working on something that will become a final product that's probably hopefully to a big movie or television show. So try to move in that, but mostly networking I think is the biggest advice, and survive real
Yeah,
quick.
and I would try, if you're working closely with editors or assistant editors on this
Let 'em
project,
know.
I would reach out to them and
Let 'em
Yeah.
know.
make
One
sure.
of them is my former editor and
There you
Harry's
go.
former editor. So
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, let them know.
Yeah.
Sharon,
Cool.
you want to? Okay, great.
Awesome.
All right, so let's, we got 2 more people in line, 3 more questions? All right, 3 more, right? All right, let's do a speed round on this because we are at our end of our time. So let's
Hi,
speed round.
I'm Aaron. I've edited a feature, indie feature, and a bunch of shorts. Just like how to get more like indie features, like just obviously like emailing friends, and once you've kind of exhausted your friends network, like what's a good way to kind of get.
I wish people still used Craigslist.
Well, staff.
I'm telling you.
Staff
What was
me
the
up.
secret?
Yeah, Staff Me
What do
Up
people
is
use
one.
this?
I haven't found anything on it, but Staff Me Up is great. I discovered the casting one. Backstage is starting to list editors on it, which I find fascinating. So I kind of am checking out just to see what's going on there. Of course, Facebook groups. Any other?
I think film festivals are a great resource. If there are any local film festivals and you see, LA Shores, I mean, there's tons of them here, but also all over the place. And if you see films that you like, even from online festivals of Sundance and South by and whatever, like you can contact some of these short filmmakers. A lot of them, some will have editors that they work with, but a lot of them don't, or they've worked with somebody once and it went okay and they're still looking. But if you start reaching out to filmmakers, I think that's part of what we talked about with networking. One thing that I wanted to say is it's great to meet editors and assistant editors and VFX editors, but it's also really important to meet writers and directors and producers, because a lot of times they're the actual ones who are going to make the decision to hire you. And so I think if you can put yourself in situations where you're meeting those types of people, be it film festivals or like college alumni events or just meetups from places that you're all from and whatever it happens to be. But
where are they all hiding?
yeah, I don't know. Craigslist.
I want to second the film festival thing, particularly if it's an area that you're personally interested in. One of the first things I did when I came to LA, not knowing anybody, was to volunteer for the Asian American Film Festival here. And I met a bunch of people that loved Asian American film, and a lot of my first projects that I cut, the first feature that I got to do a recut on that ultimately went to Sundance, like all these things arose out of those relationships. So anything that you have an affinity for and a passion for, you're going to find a peer group that you're excited to work with.
You volunteered for that, right? Yeah, so volunteering, getting back to volunteering. And I would also say the International Palm Springs Film Festival, I had a film in it but I was so impressed with the networking opportunities that were down there, you know. So.
And your rose float.
Oh, well, yeah, you want to speak? Okay, but a little plug here. I am the designer of this year's Burbank Rose Float for the Rose Parade. Yes, very excited. I've been doing it for 43 years, and this will probably be my last. This one's going to kill me because it's a big one. But please, if you want to volunteer and help me out, I'll have a sign-up list in the back at the end.
We should all go at the same time.
Because
And we
who's
can all
helped me out
volunteer.
so far? Yep, and you actually decorated last year with me, and that's how we really got to know each other, because we were in the trenches. So please come on out if that interests you. Next question.
Hi, my name's Michelle. I'm an assistant editor. And since most work is work from home / hybrid, do you guys have any tips or suggestions on how to network with people that you don't interact with daily, like the producers, like sometimes the post team? I find it's like harder to make those relationships since, like I worked on a show where I didn't meet anyone for a year and a half until the wrap party.
Okay, one thing I did on SWAT is we tried to do what I call Drink Fridays, where, hey, can we have an hour, set aside an hour where we can all hop on Zoom together, grab your drink of choice, and just get to know each other. And that was really great for all of us. Also, networking with the other assistants, set up, like helping each other out, just doing kind of the same things you would do, because we don't get to do lunches when the crew breaks for lunch, I'd always say, come on, you got to stop working and come to lunch. So that's one thing, is setting up little Friday drink Zooms. And then we invited our post team, and some of them would show up, which was great.
I think one time on Chucky, when we were done with the director's cut, we had lunch with the director. Me and the editor and the director met up physically in a place. It's a little hard to schedule an in-person meal, but it's worth trying. Maybe not everybody can make it. Maybe you do it multiple times. Maybe it's just your team. But yeah, in person is invaluable. You still have to try an effort.
And real quick too, I tried to do lunches with my assistants. So if you're not, you're not able to meet with your editor, every time you wrap, try to do a lunch. Like suggest that. Hey, can we get together and just do a lunch? I'll come to you.
Yeah, I was going to say that same thing. But also, that's exactly where I was going to go. You know what? I'll find you. Say it.
If you could just say, I figured it out.
It's different now, and it kind of sucks, and it's really hard to get to know your team. Like, I really do miss the collaborative environment that we used to have, where we all sit around and talk about the problems that we're having with certain actors or certain scenes or length of episode, whatever it is. And yeah, it's just a different environment now, and it is tougher, I think, to acknowledge it. It's a little bit tougher to get your face in front of the producers and the showrunners. So I think, whenever there are Zooms that are happening with notes or screenings or whatever, it's probably important to try to be there and be present. And right,
that's it.
That's the one. That's it.
Oh, and here real quick on Zoom. This is a very helpful advice, because one of my assistants was the worst at it. When you do a Zoom, be on camera. Don't be off camera. And most importantly, your off-camera image, don't have it be something offensive or weird or something. You're being professional.
Yeah. What was their image?
It was like he picked some meme, and it was a guy doing this. And it's like, that's not professional. I asked him to change it out, and he refused. That's why he's not my assistant anymore, at least one of the reasons. Be professional, be on camera, be there, be present, because they will see you. And if your editor's good to you, he'll call you out. Yeah, my assistant's on it,
I just wanted to add one more thing. If you're not too shy, please use social media to your advantage. Whenever I'm on a show, I'm always posting, hey, we're at the mix. Hey, I enjoyed it. Then I'll just list, hey, I really enjoy working with XYZ. And then if you are lucky enough to be in the room with the showrunners or producers, and over time, they might even follow you on Instagram. And then if you disconnect and then you work on something else, and then let's say you get to cut something, and let's say the editor lets you say, hey, I cut this scene or I cut this, and then now they know because they're following you. And that's actually what happened to me. And then eventually I got the call because I still stayed connected through social media. So use it, please.
And I think on that real quick too is if you see some work that you really admire, like your film a couple of years ago that you got nominated for Oscar, at the time I should have reached out to you on Facebook and said, "Wow, congratulations, really loved your work," and just leave it at that, and it just starts that connection.
Hi, this is not a networking question, so if you need to move on, that's fine. But it seems like closer, okay. Basically, working 2 jobs at some point when you're trying to make the transition is kind of mandatory, right? And sometimes after a 55-hour work week as an assistant, it can be hard to, on the weekend, find that mental clarity to make progress. I was wondering if you had any techniques or things that you have heard about or that you used in your past careers to use coffee.
No, for me, and I'm going through right now real quick, there's the Calm app, which is free to us through through our MPI plan. I haven't quite found it working yet. So what I do is I go onto YouTube and listen to meditative music, or they say there's these frequencies, that you can just play in the background, and it really helps me zen out. Also, what's that called? The central oil therapy, which is, I wanted to say this earlier, which is very helpful to making your cutting room soothing to the producers and showrunner when they come in. They always go, "God, every time I come into your cutting room, it's so relaxing." It's like, yes, it's my scented oil and my special lighting and my artwork on the wall, So there's techniques that I use to get into what I call get into the mood for cutting, or getting into that mental space. Because you have to be in a really relaxed, creative space to cut. And when you're not doing your best work. At least that's what I feel.
For me, I often have done like a job and then I take on an extra thing, and the last thing I want to do after like editing all day is edit something else, and it's really hard. 2 things. One is that I will always like go for a walk or a hike or something like that to like clear your mind, and oftentimes think about what I'm going to be working on next. So it's just like a mental break. And the other thing I think is like changing your location, which if you're working from home, like go in a different room, go set up a different office, a different thing, even a coffee shop if you can work from there, whatever it happens to be. It's just like sometimes I think physically like changing your environment helps you be like, okay, I'm not doing the same thing I was just doing. I'm like doing something new.
Anything else real quick before we have our last question from Rich? Step on up, Rich.
In wanting to support my editor, I wanted to ask you, what's the best way of giving feedback when they ask for your advice on a cut?
Honestly.
We asked for it.
Yeah, honestly. I think, speaking for myself, I appreciate honest feedback, constructive feedback that I think will move us forward. Like, I guess it kind of goes back to that theme of being positive. And when I say being positive, I don't necessarily mean you got to be happy-go-lucky. You got to be, super cheerful about everything. But it's like solutions-oriented. So I've gotten feedback from assists previously that may have just pointed out a problem. And chances are, I know it's a problem too. It's not really why we're having the discussion, but it's like, what kind of solutions can we come up with as a team? Because that's how I look at my assist, is this is my teammate. And if we have 2 different approaches, I might want to try both approaches. If we have 5 different approaches, I may want to try all 5, or I may want to try 3 of them. But I think if it's coming from a place where it is intended to be constructive and have solutions, I think that's always welcome advice for me.
Don't do what Harry did, say add a ticking clock, right, Harry? Also, yeah, especially as a PA. You can say, if you notice the editor's struggling, you say, "Hey, I'm here if you need need me to look at something," and always, have the solution. If you have the solution, say it for sure. Like, "Hey, if you just remove that shot, that one shot is getting in the way. try that, you know. Suggest if they want to put the scene away, if you could take a stab at it. Go ahead.
But also at the right time too, because there's definitely wrong times to make suggestions.
So I do this. I do this as well, and so much, especially like at the script stage, for example, when I read a script and I'm responding to it in an interview or something. I try not to be prescriptive, but I try to be an audience. And so I think the best way is to speak as an audience and to say, this confused me, or I found this funny, or I didn't find this funny. Like, there's a way that I think that you can sort of, you're always safe in sort of talking about those things. I didn't understand this, or this wasn't clear to me, like that type of thing. Because that's very, very useful feedback. Because I think versus, oh, I don't know if that second shot is working. You know, because like that's sort of like not being an audience, that's being prescriptive in a way. And I think as far as being safe, that speaking the way an audience might speak is always going to keep you in safe territory.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off that, I think the conversations I usually have with my assists about their feedback is about if something's working, or if I feel like something's not working, we'll watch the scene together, or actually at the end of an assembly, I always watch the act or the entire show together, and then we talk about, okay, what made sense, what was confusing, were you registering this story, or did it get lost? It's like things like that. I think that's such a good way of putting it, is be an audience. It's like, what can we do to tell our story in a more effective way? And that's the type of feedback that's always appreciated, because we're so deep into it all the time. You can't always take that macro view. So it's really helpful to have somebody you trust who can offer things that are working, things that aren't, and ways to approach it.
And I think as an editor, you need to welcome your assistant into doing that with you. Because I did that with Rich, right? I'd hand over a sequence and say, let me know if something doesn't make sense, or, you know, because especially the action sequences, you know, does the action follow? Do you following where people are moving and doing this? I would do that all the time with you, right? You never gave me a note. Were you afraid, or just...
No, you're great. You're great.
See, there you heard it. I'm great. Thank you. I think on that note, I think we have to end the panel, because it doesn't get any better than that. Oh, you're so sweet. I do. You have one last thing? Are you ahead with the Ghostbusters? Yeah. Okay. Let me do my thank yous first. So this concludes the end of our panel. I want to thank all of our panel guests today. I hope you guys got out of it as much as I got out of it. This is always great to talk about our careers and advice to you guys. I wanted to give a special thank you out to, of course, Sean Linnell for bringing this whole panel to life. And he's already working on the 2025 panels, so, you know, and with the Membership Outreach Committee, thank them. Thank Willow and Emma, who are here today, who are our Guild staff that allowed us to be here and handed out get your raffle tickets out, by the way. Horalena, F. Hudson Miller, our Vice President of MPEG, David White, who's in the back with Jim Turner, who is part of our Education and Training Coordinator. He's back there right now giving of his time. And, of course, my name is Eric C. Anderson. I love to edit and edit to live. Thank you guys so much. So, and one thing, Sean, step on up and give... so we're doing something at the Guild actually right now. So let's end the podcast.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Hang on one second. Let's make sure... David, are we clear? Oh, and thank everybody at home. Wave. Sorry, I forgot them. Can we see behind? Wizard, can you pop out and let us know we're off air? Maybe they fell asleep back there.